On today's episode of My Isolation Podcast, we're back for 2024, and so is Fox's X-Men universe with Deadpool 3. So to celebrate, we'll be looking back at all the previous X-Men movies. We're going through the highs, the lows, and the last stand. And X-Men Origins Wolverine. And X-Men Apocalypse. And X-Men Dark Pheonix. And New Mutants. Yeah. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of My Isolation Podcast, one of the best media-related podcasts ever that you've probably never heard of until right now. I'm your host, Connor. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and yeah, mate, we're back for 2024. It feels good to be back. We're back for season 2. It just feels good to be back for quote-unquote season 2 of 2024 season, whatever we ended up referring to this year as. For this podcast, but it's good to be back. It's good to be back into the fold and get back into things. And as I said in the intro, today we're going to be looking at retrospective. Well, we're going to looking at retrospective. No, mate, we're doing a retrospective. We're doing one on the X-Men movies, mainly because, as stated in the intro, the X-Men franchise, the Foxmen universe, as some people like to refer to it as, is coming back this year with Deadpool 3, which is really weird. I never thought we'd ever see the Foxmen universe ever again, to be honest. I knew Deadpool 3 would be coming, obviously, and it would be in the MCU because, like, why would you not bring Deadpool over? That just makes a ton of sense. And I think we'd see, Hugh Jackman coming back, loads of Fox X-Men characters coming back, like Patrick Stewart's Charles Xavier, Multiverse of Madness, and Pyro coming back in Deadpool 3, along with Sabretooth from the first X-Men movie. Mate. So let's not waste any more time, because I've got like at least 13 of these motherfuckers to get through. So it's going to be in a really, really fun, bumpy but fun ride for the first episode of this podcast. And it makes sense as well, because last year we did a retrospective on Phase 4, and now we're doing a retrospective on the X-Men franchise. So so let's go on to the first movie, X-Men 2000. Now, before we get started into X-Men 2000, a little bit of context on how this movie got made, a quick little thing of its production history. I believe an X-Men movie was in development for years, and never really got off the ground. And then, obviously, sometime, I think it was in the 90s or 80s, Marvel ended up filing for bankruptcy. I can't remember the circumstances as to why, the exact circumstances. I'm assuming the comics weren't selling very well or something along those. I don't think they weren't selling very well. I'm not too sure why they filed for bankruptcy, but they did. In order to get themselves out of bankruptcy, they had to sell the movie rights to their most popular IPs to certain studios. So Sony got Spider-Man, and I believe they got Ghost Rider. Blade, I think, went to New Line Cinema, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was New Line. I'm pretty sure it was New Line, but I may be wrong on that. Who else? Your Hulk went to Universal, and X-Men, Fantastic Four, Daredevil all went to 20th Century Fox. And for years, and obviously the contracts were that a new movie had to be made within a certain time frame. If it wasn't, the character would revert back to Marvel. Except for Hulk, for some reason, Hulk seems to be in this weird limbo where that's not the case. Or maybe he might be, because apparently Hulk's might possibly have come back to the MCU proper now, like Marvel might own him again, but that's never been officially confirmed or announced or whatever. But yeah, Fox ended up getting the X-Men movies and X-Men franchise, and for years they made X-Men movies. And what's so interesting about the X-Men franchise as a whole is that it's kind of the longest running. It's basically the longest running superhero franchise without having to be rebooted or remade. Like we've had reboots of Spider-Man, we've had reboots of Batman, we've had reboots of Superman. We're getting a new reboot of Superman next year with Superman Legacy. I believe that's the fourth. Let's see, there was the Richard Donner ones, then Brandon Routh, and then Man of Steel. This is technically the fourth rebooted Superman in a while. Oh no, wait, no, there was unless you count Smallville and Superman and Lois. Yeah, so I guess maybe the fifth or sixth Superman to be rebooted, who knows. So, so, that's been rebooted, and then you've had Blade's getting rebooted, and eventually, if that movie ever ends up coming out, because that movie's been in development hell for quite some time. A very long time, actually. Fantastic Four are getting rebooted again next year. They've just announced the cast for that. But the X-Men movies have just kept trotting along. And yeah, they've swapped out casts here and there. But it's always remained pretty much the same. It's still the same franchise at the end of the day. It's still set in the same world, the same characters. Yes, they've reset the timeline, but they've never really properly rebooted it until the MCU version comes out in 10 plus years at this point. I don't know, we'll see. That's probably when we'll get a full proper reboot of the X-Men franchise, which I'm very much looking forward to. Seeing how Marvel Studios tackles that franchise, as well as the themes of oppression and discrimination, all that stuff with that, and all that good stuff with the X-Men movies and the X-Men IP as a whole. One was in production hell for a while. Fox got the rights. Bryan Singer came along, wanted to do one. Kevin Feige got hired. I think it was his very first producing credit, if I remember correctly. I think X-Men was his first proper big producing credit. I think he may have been an intern at that point. It was either on that or the first Spider-Man movie. It was either one of those two. And it got made. It came out in the year 2000, which was over 20 years ago now, and it became a really big fucking hit. A really big hit, and it set the course for the X-Men movies for years and years to come. Almost 20 years, pretty much. Because rewatching it again nowadays, we are going to delve into talking about the movie now, I swear. But yeah, rewatching it, whenever I rewatch the first X-Men movie, I'm always fascinated by it. I find it a really fascinating movie in terms of superhero pop culturism and all that stuff. Because obviously there was the superhero, Batman and Robin had come out, and superhero movies were kind of dead for about a year. No one really knew if we were going to get any more of those because Batman and Robin just did so fucking poorly. And then suddenly, from the years of the late 90s to the early 2000s, we had this superhero movie boom with Blade, X-Men, and Spider-Man. And obviously, Blade was the one that got the movie boom started. Spider-Man was the one that kind of cemented superheroes back into the fold of pop culture. At least in the realm of movies, anyway. That was kind of the one where it was like, we're back and we're here to stay. But if it wasn't for this Bryan Singer's first X-Men movie, sandwiched in between those two, I don't think the superhero genre would be here today without any of those three movies. Those three movies really did work off each other to get superhero movies back into the mainstream, back into being taken seriously again. If it wasn't for the X-Men movies just being sandwiched in between those two, I don't think that would have happened. The superhero genre could have phased out once again, even if Sam Raimi's Spider-Man turned out to be good. And we have a lot to be thankful for on that as well, because obviously with Blade and X-Men, it obviously Batman and Robin kind of tanked. Not only did it tank the superhero genre for about a year, but it also gave this kind of stigma that we can't do superheroes goofy and silly and hard anymore. We can't have fun. We need to be dark and gritty and serious. And that was kind of the point of the first X-Men movie and the point of the first Blade movie. It was all about getting superheroes back into the fold and being taken seriously again. And it wasn't until Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie came out when he essentially said, "No, you can still do the goofy, lighthearted superhero thing. You don't have to go dark all the time and serious all the time. As long as you have some good drama in there, that's all fine." As I said before, I always find this movie really fascinating to go back to, because just before that lens, and it's cool to see everything getting started. This really was the start of a franchise, and because the franchise lasted so long, in this current era, and this current state of the franchise lasted so long without being remade, without being rebooted. It's always really fascinating to go back to the very first one and to just see how everything got started. I feel like it'd pretty much be the same if you rewatched all of the Mission Impossible movies. You go back to that first one, which I believe came out in the 90s, maybe 1999, 1997 or 8. And you get back into that and you see all of everything getting started again, and everything getting, there's the beginnings. You see the early beginnings, the humbled beginnings of the franchise, and it's really interesting to see. And then you cut to Dead Reckoning Part 1, or Dead Reckoning, I guess, because they've apparently dropped the Part 1, Part 2 one now, because I think Dead Reckoning did fine in the box office. I didn't think it hit the numbers that I think the studio wanted it to, unfortunately, which is really sad to hear, but because the Mission Impossible movies are pretty decent all around. But it is interesting to go back and to kind of see where the franchise got started, and seeing everything for the first time, seeing Professor X and Magneto for the first time, seeing mutants being mentioned for the first time, seeing those iconic opening credit sequences for the first time, where you're going through all the DNA blob things and everything like that, and hearing iconic lines like I feel sorry for the poor soul who comes to my school looking for trouble. Seeing it all come together again, it's just really fascinating. It's always fascinating to go back and to look at the start of the franchise, but with the X-Men franchise in particular, it really is interesting to kind of go back and see where it did all start. And there's a very, very early 2000s feel to it, which is weird, because considering that this movie was filmed in the late 90s. But yeah, with the leather suits and everything like that, and it does kind of suck how we're only getting Hugh Jackman, and I'm pretty certain all the other X-Men characters who, if they do end up popping up in Deadpool 3, in their iconic outfits now rather than in this first film. But I get why they did it, because obviously they weren't sure how to do it on screen for the first time. They wanted superhero movies to be taken seriously again, and they didn't want to run the risk of doing another Batman and Robin. So obviously they were like, we need to do the black leather suits and everything, which kind of sucks. I kind of wish we delved more into those those silly campy the silly campy suits much more earlier on, but there's a very early 2000s feel to it, not just in the suits as well, but with the way it feels and the way it looks, the way it's filmed, even the action as well. It just feels very early 2000s, and the early 2000s are always an interesting period to go back to now. Just seeing how, because it's obviously the early 2000s, there was that kind of the transition from the 90s are coming over to the new decade and everything like that. It's always interesting to see the crossover with those, and we're now seeing that crossover with the early 2000s and the early 2020s as well. A lot of early 2000s stuff are coming back into the fold as well, which is interesting to see. There is a very early 2000s feel to this movie that can be kind of in some ways admired in a way. And I think there's a YouTuber by the name of Samuel Gavin. He used to run a channel called Sam's Channel, but he did a review of this movie way back in the day, where he pointed out, if you think about it, this movie kind of feels a bit like a TV pilot in a way, and I can definitely see that there's definitely a TV pilot-y kind of vibe going on there. This definitely feels like a kind of a backdoor pilot to a TV show, and you never know. Maybe that's what the OG plan was. Maybe they wanted to do a live action X-Men TV series at one point, but just never got around to doing it. So, or maybe the movie just did really successful, and they were like, let's just carry on with movies instead. But I highly doubt that was the case. There's a very TV pilot-y feeling to it, which can get a little bit distracting at points. Particularly with the action as well. But the action in this movie isn't bad per se. It's just very basic. It's very, that's a kind of, it's very simple. It's very basic. I get the reason why they went, and it's very safe as well. This movie doesn't really take a lot of, obviously, yeah, adapting the X-Men, the kind of one of the biggest and most celebrated Marvel properties ever into the medium of film. It's always going to be a big risk. They just about managed to succeed in it with animation, with X-Men the animated series and stuff like that. But with movies, it never been done before. And they really, I guess, they really wanted to try and get it right. And I guess, going too big too soon would have been a bit too big of a risk, if that makes sense. So I think they probably did the right thing to kind of just play it safe and play it simple, and do kind of a bit of a TV pilot-y thing with it as well, which, and I guess in a way it makes sense because this is the first X-Men movie that you don't know if audiences would want to come back to another one. So it's always, this is, in this way, it's kind of like when they do test pilots for TV shows and stuff, they screen it to a bunch of people, and then If it's successful, they pick the show up and everything like that. This is kind of what this movie essentially is. It's kind of like a test pilot, but for a movie franchise. They're putting out there in theaters, they're seeing how it does, and if it tracks well, if it makes a lot of money, if the audiences love it, they can greenlight the rest of it and kickstart a franchise. So in a way, I can kind of understand where they were coming from, having to do that, and doing the whole TV pilot kind of thing with it, if that was the case, because I wasn't there, I wasn't in the production as well. Apparently, Kevin Feige had to babysit Bryan Singer on production, because apparently Bryan Singer was just a massive pain to work with. As it has been pointed out, this is not like a scoop or anything. It's been very well pointed out now that Bryan Singer was not the best person to work with, hence why he's not made a movie in a good couple of years now. And I think we're all the best for it. Don't get me wrong, he did a great job bringing X-Men to the screen. It's just a shame he wasn't a great director to work with. Let's just say that. So let's go on to the cast and the characters now. I don't know what the fuck we did to deserve Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen as Magneto and Professor X, but whatever it was that we did to get to deserve that, I'm glad we did it, because my god, are these two, this is some of the most perfect casting in a comic book movie I think I've ever seen. They play off each other well, they fit the characters well. There's just something about that casting, like Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart as Charles and Eric. There's just something about it it just fits the mold. It's so correct. It's one of those things where it just feels right. It just feels right having these two in this movie, and it's so cool when you look into their personal history together. The fact that they're really good friends in real life, they go on trips together and everything like that, and then they go in this movie where they're essentially they're still mates. Like Eric and Charles are still technically friends, but they're not just on opposite sides of one another. Like Charles is the more pacifistic one. He's not a big fan of violence. He wants to live in a world where mutants and humans are equals to one another. Eric is more of a violent figure. He believes that mutants are the future, and humanity needs to be wiped out from existence, and all that stuff, and that mutants are more superior to them. And obviously, because he's been through a lot of shit in his life as well, going to be like all that time he spent in Poland as a kid in the concentration camps and everything like that during World War II, which we see in the flashbacks to this movie, which is such a powerful scene, by the way. Just seeing little kid Eric getting dragged away from his mum and him trying to activate his powers for the first time, trying to get that fence just to move as well, which was just really powerful stuff. And then seeing the marking the numbered marking they put on him as if he was some kind of prisoner on his arm, and the fact that he still keeps that as kind of a reminder of what he's been through. The whole point of Magneto is that while you don't particularly agree with his approach to things, with the more violent approach, at least you're not supposed to anyway, but you understand where he's coming from completely. I love that first scene as well with them, where they're in the building. I can't remember which building it was. But there's obviously Jean Grey's giving a demonstration on mutants and trying. I think it might be Congress they were in. I think they were in Congress. They were in Congress. Yeah, because they were trying to. The Homo sapiens were trying to get a Mutant Registration Act ignited. That's the whole plot. That's part of the plot anyway, where they want mutants to reveal themselves to the world. Despite the fact that a lot of mutants do not feel comfortable revealing themselves to the world because they're scared of being hunted, hurt, killed, what have you. And you see that first scene where Charles realizes that Eric's there and Eric's watching it. But you see Eric in the shadows. You don't actually see Ian McKellen just yet. And then Professor Xavier goes up to Eric and says, "Don't give up on them, Eric." Begs him not to give up on humans, and then obviously Eric turns around and you see his face, and it's like, oh my god, there's something so cool about the shot with the door and everything. I love the part where Charles is trying to look into Eric's mind, and Ian McKellen's just like, "What are you doing snooping around here, Charles?" It's like, oh my god, it's just such a cool line. I don't know what we did to deserve these two as Professor X and Magneto, but I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we did, and I'm glad that we had these two as these two characters for years. And there's also rumors running around they could show up in Deadpool 3. They could show up also in Secret Wars. I'd love that, just to see him one more time as well. I mean, I know that was kind of the point of Days of Future Past, to see them both one more time. At least Magneto, anyways, because obviously Patrick Stewart ended up appearing in Logan a few years after Days of Future Past came out. But it would be nice to see him one more time. It was nice seeing him again in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, even though it was kind of annoying that they killed him off again, like they have done, that they do multiple times in this franchise, which is, yeah, we'll touch on that later on, unless I forget to bring it up, but we'll see. But yeah, I think they both fit the part really, really well. The rest of the cast as well, James Marsden was great as Cyclops. Halle Berry, not perfect as Storm, particularly with the dodgy accent that she's trying to put on, but she does get better as the movies go along, and as when she eventually decides to just ditch the accent, I think she really gets into her stride. It's a shame that we only really got 4 movies with her, and even then she's not in Days of Future Past like that much for that long. And I wish that she was in it a little bit more, but hopefully I think she's going to show up she might show up in Deadpool 3, so let's hope so. And the rest of the cast as well, like Pheonix, Jasin, I think I'm pronouncing that right, as Jean Grey. I think she was really good in this movie, really portrayed Jean pretty well, and it really did help set up her arc of her telekinesis and her powers for X-Men 3: The Last Stand, even though that movie botched it up completely. Anna Paquin is great as Rogue. I liked Rogue's story of how she had to leave her family because she very nearly killed her boyfriend, and seeing obviously her friendship with Logan, how she feels like an outsider even in Professor Xavier's school for the gifted. I think she did really well and everything. So yeah, I think she did fine. Tyler Mane as Sabretooth. Apparently he might be in Deadpool 3 because obviously Sabretooth, this version of Sabretooth was from this first film, was on the set of Deadpool 3, at least somebody who looked like him a bit. Ray Park is good as Toad. That scene when Toad just squashes that police officer just by jumping on him is really creepy and really unique as well. Shawn Ashmore is really good as Bobby, aka Iceman. Oh, again, I love that scene. Talking about seeing things for the first time as well. I love the scene where Rogue is rolled into the school almost immediately, and then you see that scene with her and with those two interacting, and Bobby makes her that iced flower, and he just says "Welcome to Mutant High," and it's like, oh my god, that, I don't know why, but the line "Welcome to Mutant High" is just it's just iconic. It reeks so much of the early 2000s, but in a good way. Bruce Davison is so good as Robert Mutant Kelly because he's just an arsehole. Like, you really do not like him in this movie. Like, even when he comes to the mansion to get help after having his mutation activated, and he's still saying stuff to them where it's just like, dude, they're trying to help you, man. Like Storm's trying to comfort him, and he's like, oh, are you scared of me? Do you hate me? And then he's about to, he's like, oh, well, don't worry, there's one less of us for you to worry about. And it's like, bro, why are you saying that? Like, they're trying to help you, you fucking dickhead. Fucking hate him. Rebecca Romijn, I completely forgot to mention her. Rebecca Romijn is so good as Mystique. She's cold, ruthless, really badass as well. Her ability to transform into pretty much anybody or anything is pretty terrifying, particularly when you consider the fact that she can do that and she's one of the bad guys. Is really interesting. But you do also, again, like with Eric, you understand where she's coming from. She's all blue. She doesn't look human or anything like that, and she even says, you were the reason that I was scared to go to school as a child. And it's like, yeah, and it is really scary to, this girl never really got to, get an education or anything like that because, she was treated so differently. And that's one of the things I really love about this movie. They really focus home in on, the themes of oppression and being different and acceptance as well. Like, the mutants are just not accepted into society, and the mutants are scared and everything, and the crossover between that and the LGBTQ plus community, as well as other communities, other communities who have been oppressed or marginalized in the past couple of years. Not the past couple of years, forever. Let's be honest, but it's really coming to light in the past couple of years. Really does come to play here. Like guys like Robert Kelly, are a good, commentary on, those alt-right politicians who hate LGBTQ plus people, hate non-binary people, hate people of color, who basically don't like anyone who's not cis, straight or white, basically. he's a good commentary on those types of people, and seeing how those people can easily be influenced into thinking, oh no, and the way and the conversation him and Gene have at the start during that debate and everything like that, where he's trying to plead his case of, oh no, we need this Mutant Registration Act, they're really dangerous, and then Gene's just like, well, technically speaking, humans can be dangerous as well, and he's just pulling any straw man argument that he can, and people just buying into it because he's just very good at like convincing people that his straw man arguments are good arguments, even though they're really not. They're really shit. But also showing the oppression and the and everything like that this world has. Even if people knew that he was doing a straw man argument, they wouldn't really care and they probably don't care because they hate mutants because they're different and people are scared of what's different, and that movie really highlights that. I think Bryan Singer was able to really get that down. Even in comic books as well, he was really able to capture that that commentary from the comic books and bring it to life on screen, which I think was really interesting. And also, play the franchise for years. That's kind of what the X-Men were about, essentially. They were this metaphor for racism, for civil rights, for LGBTQ plus rights. And nowadays, there'd be just those on top, as well as Islamophobia and anti-Semitism and all that stuff, as well, like a good metaphor for that kind of stuff. Again, treating people differently just for being different, for not being the norm and everything like that. So I think that was really cool as well. But let's get on to the casting that I think everyone wants me to talk about. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I mean, perfect. I mean, there's a reason why he's been Wolverine for 20 plus years now. The fact that this man is still playing this part, even though he was supposed to stand down in 2017 and just not retire as the role, the fact that he's still going at it even to this very day, with X-Men, with Deadpool 3 coming up, as well, and he's probably will appear in Secret Wars, and apparently there's rumors running around that Kevin Feige might include him and Deadpool in Kang Dynasty, which I think will be really cool to see. I think that and again he captures that the pain and the misery and the suffering that that Wolverine has gone through his entire life as well, and the oppression that he himself and as well has to face, the fact that he's essentially an animal in a way. Like he has temper problems, he has animal instinct, he has a good sense of smell, a good sense of hearing as an animal would. But his healing factor as well plays a part as well. Like, this guy has lived for hundreds of years and has lost a lot of stuff, and you can just see that pain and torment on his face. Like, even little scenes as well when Rogue and him are in his truck, and Rogue says to him, do the claws hurt when they come out? And he just goes, every time. It's like, oh god, he's a very tortured and very just a very tortured character, really. That Wolverine, that poor Logan. He's a very tortured soul, that Wolverine. The scene where he's cage fighting and you don't see his claws right away. They're coming, but you don't see him. That guy goes to punch him and he touches his knuckles, and he can feel the sharp tips of the adamantium claws, and you get a little hint. You hear a little clunk sound effect as well. And then the guy's like, oh god, oh no, my hand, and then you get a little hint towards them, and then later on, Wolverine finally gets the claws out, and that effect as well is still good even to this very day. For an early 2000s movie, that effect where Wolverine's claws come out of his hand, it just looks so good. Even to this very day, they look good, and the claws themselves still look good to this day. Apparently, they were actually metal and they were actually sharp, which is crazy to me that somebody at Fox was like, yeah, we'll make them sharp. Why not? We may as well. Gotta be realistic, and it's like, oh my god. And apparently, Hugh Jackman actually stabbed the stunt double for Mystique during when they were fighting in the museum. I believe it was. I believe it was the museum. I believe it was a museum. So when they fighting each other in the museum and everything like that. As well, I think he stabbed her there, and it was like that was just insane to think about. That at one point they were like, oh yeah, we'll make him actually metal, like why not? And it's like, damn, man. But yeah, Hugh Jackman's really great when he screams, when he roars as Wolverine. Again, and his friendship with Rogue is really sweet and really cute. They have him and Anna Paquin have a good chemistry with one another. It's this very kind of weird, not father and daughter relationship they have, but generally just a nice friendship that they have with each other, and he always looks out for her. That's what I like about Wolverine in his movies. He's a badass, but he's got a good heart as well. He's got a very warm heart with him. He's a gentle giant, let's just say that. He's a very gentle giant. unless you hurt his friends, then in which case he's a very savage beast. As well, and he gets some really funny lines in this as well, like when he's running around the X Mansion for the first time, and then he meets Charles, and Charles is telling him like all the names of the X-Men, and he's like, Storm, yeah, and he goes to Charles Xavier and he's like, what do they call you? Wheels? It's like, I still laugh at that joke even to this very day. It's not like a funny joke or anything like that, but there's something about where I think it's the way Hugh Jackman just goes, wheels? It's like, and yeah, it's just very, I don't know what it is, but it's just a very funny line. Yeah, I really like that. I think that was really cute. The action sequences, like I said beforehand, can be quite basic at times. But again, and the final climax as well with Eric and his idea of like, oh yeah, I'm going to use the machine to turn everyone into a mutant. It's a little basic and stuff, but it's still good for the time being. It's still decent enough, and like you can let it go because it's their first go around at like bringing the X-Men to life. And like I said, you don't really want to go too big too soon. You kind of want to. You kind of want to, play it safe a little bit if you're doing it, if you're doing it for the very first time. Yeah, so we're going back to going back to the effects. They still look pretty decent. Obviously Wolverine's claws look great, and most of the effects are pretty decent. Even now, they do look a bit off, but they don't look bad or anything like that. They still look pretty good for the time. And again, you can kind of let it go because this was the early 2000s. Technology had not, definitely, even by the early 2000s standards, the technology had not really advanced as well as it has now, which is nice to see. And again, just seeing everything done for the first time is very nostalgic. It's very fascinating to watch, as well. And again, some of the dialogue is a little clunky in places. The final action sequence is a little basic. Eric's plan of wanting to use the machine is a bit too simple. Apart from that, though, I mean, the movie is still pretty good. Oh, and that final chess game sequence as well, actually. That final chess game sequence is great. I mean, just seeing them interact together and getting to spend time with one another. I love the idea that Magneto is in a plastic prison rather than a metal prison, because obviously he can control metal and everything like that. And yeah, so that's pretty much it that's X-Men from the year 2000. Still a pretty decent movie. Not as good as some of the later entries. Definitely not as bad as some of the other entries, which we'll get to those in due course. Or we'll definitely get to those in due course. Do not worry about that. But it's still a pretty decent watch. It's a very fascinating watch. If you want to go back to see where it all began, I would recommend going back to the first X-Men movie. Just go back to, if you want to look, if you're feeling nostalgic, you want to go back to see where it all began. Do it. Do it. Why not? If you're doing an X-Men marathon like I was doing a few weeks ago, hence why this episode took so long to get the fuck out, because oh god, there was so many movies I had to watch. Then yeah, I would recommend you check it out, because this movie is it's not like an amazing movie by any means necessary, but but for their first go at it, the first proper go at bringing the X-Men to life, it still does a pretty solid job in my opinion. A really good solid job in my opinion. But it's definitely not as good as the next movie we're going to talk about today, X-Men 2, or X-Men United, as it's called in some territories. Yes, this one is much better than the first one. Feels more like a movie and less like a TV pilot. Again, I feel like with the first movie, I think they may have, like, they could have deliberately gone with the TV pilot approach, mainly just to try and be like, let's just test the waters, let's see if people want this, and now that they know that people want more X-Men movies, they were like, right then, let's get cracking, let's get to making another X-Men movie. And we got X-Men 2. Brian Singer came back to direct this one. This was essentially done to set up the Dark Phoenix saga the first time around, which he did not get to direct because due to like problems with Tom Rothman and as well as Fox in general, and him wanting to do Superman Returns. Why? Don't know why. That movie sucked. Yeah, so the action scenes are much better, much more grander, less basic as well. They take a little bit more risks with the story and everything like that as well. Like the opening sequence of Nightcrawler in the White House, for example, that's a pretty good action sequence, if I do say so. That's a really solid action sequence. You really get the sense that he's being, he's not in his right state of mind. He's being controlled by something else. You don't really know that at the time, but you do feel like that something's off with him. Even if you don't read the source material. And yeah, and the whole thing about, Alkaline Lake and the Weapon X program, Wolverine getting some of his memories back as well, that's really interesting to see. Those flashbacks are really good, and really effective as well. Seeing the pain again when he gets the claws for the first time, he's just screaming because he's got these metal things coming out of his hands and there's blood everywhere and everything. It's really quite shocking to see. And he even says, it hurts when they come out. It hurts. I think that's why he has to scream every time he like sets them out, because they do. They would hurt, because if you got fucking like claws popping out your hands, mate, they would fucking hurt. The characters are really great. Storm shines here. Jean is great. Cyclops is still good. Professor X is still good, though. Much like the first movie, he's pretty much with the first movie he was out of the action for after the final act, the final climax of the movie. But in this one, he's pretty much out of the action for almost the whole duration of it. That was kind of the thing with these movies as well. These early X-Men movies anyway, they always tried to keep Xavier out of the action as much as possible, which I didn't really like that much, to be honest. I feel like we could have seen a bit more of Xavier in the action of the movies. Obviously, that got improved with the prequel movies earlier down the line, because obviously you've got a much younger Professor Xavier in those. But I would have loved to have seen Patrick Stewart get a bit more to do in these films, but he does do a lot good with what he's given. You do see Logan and Xavier's relationship really start to grow, really start to bond. You start to get the feeling that Xavier really does generally care for Logan, and even though he could have easily told Logan his entire backstory, he wanted Logan to figure that out for himself. He's trying to teach Logan good morals and good lessons, which I really appreciate. He's his teacher, but he's also kind of somewhat of a mutant father figure for him, which is crazy to think when you consider the fact that Logan's supposed to be a lot more older than Xavier. Brian Cox is also really good in this film as well. He plays William Stryker in this movie, and he does such a good job. I mean, Brian Cox is one of the best actors ever working today. He's a living, working legend. If you hated Robert Kelly in the first movie, you absolutely loathe William Stryker in this movie. The things that he does to mutants, the experiments you find out he's been pulling on mutants, the fact that he experimented on his own son, the scenes where he's torturing Magneto in his prison, which is just, it makes him, he's such an arsehole. And you generally, so when Magneto does chain him up to that wall, bit of concrete in the first movie, and he's got the water coming down and it's about to drown him, you're like, yeah, you deserved it, mate. Like, he took mutants and he fucking tortured them basically, which is really sad. And it's like, he's just a horrible, and he did that to his own son as well. Like, even Professor X is just like, Williams, this is your son. This is your fucking son. And he clearly, he really does not like mutants and really hates mutants. And you really do understand that, and you really do get that. His history of Wolverine is explored really well. It's really deep. It's really thoughtful. It's got a lot of lore to it. It's a shame there was a certain prequel movie that came out a few years after this one that kind of destroyed all of that setup. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Anyway, so onto the good movies. Onto the good X-Men movies. I love the continuation of the theme of oppression of everything in this movie, like when Bobby and Pyro and Rogue are being kind of tormented by those bullies in the museum in there, and to the point where Professor X has to like freeze everybody as well. You see that power for the first time. That's a really cool effect as well. I quite like that effect as well. The fact that he can just stop people with his mind is quite interesting, and it expands on his powers as well, and what he can do and what he can actually like do and everything like that, which is really cool to see as well. And again, I think a lot of people, particularly people in the LGBTQ plus community, LGBTQIA plus community, sorry about that, they obviously would have identified the X-Men well in the first one, but you're definitely going to identify with the X-Men in this one as well. There's so many lines in here that I feel like any queer kid ever is going to quickly identify with, like when Bobby tells his parents that he's mutants and his mum says the line, "Have you tried not being a mutant?" And it's like, oh my god, every single any queer child that watched this movie back in the day, they were probably hurting because they'd probably heard the exact same thing. Have you tried not being queer? Like, oh my god, it's such a powerful line. But it's very real. It's very real. People, there have been family members who have said that to their kids when they've come out as gay or bi or trans or non-binary or whatever. Like, I've tried, have you tried not being that? And it's like, oh god, it's such a bigotry line as well. But it really sets stakes to this as well. Pyro's turned to the evil side. He leaves Xavier's School for the Gifted to join the Brotherhood. That was a really cool twist. It's just a shame that Pyro never. I'd say X-Men 3 didn't really utilize him too well. He doesn't really have a lot to do in X-Men 3, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to that. The Dark Phoenix setup I thought was really cool as well. It's just a shame that again, Last Stand kind of ruined that as well. But I do think it was set up really well. The final scene with Jean, the final emotional moment when Jean has to sacrifice herself to like get the jet up into air as well. This movie's so well choreographed and well coordinated and everything like that as well. I can't really spot any. There's not really things that stand out to me that make that like I'm thinking about them like, okay, that didn't make any sense. No, this movie's pretty well tightly lived together. Again, like I said beforehand, the action sequences are really good. I think one of my favorite parts of this movie is probably when Mystique is, if she's imitating Logan and then she attacks all the soldiers and then she just slides under the door just before it closes and she gives them the bird. That's such a badass moment. I love it. Mystique's really good in this movie as well. She's such a shit stirrer. Like when she's goes into Logan's tent and essentially pretending to be Jean, and it's essentially just trolling him throughout the entire scene. He's essentially just trolling him, which is quite funny to think about it. But she's just like, I want to stir up trouble because obviously we got the Logan Jean Cyclops love triangle thing, which I was never a big fan of, to be honest. I felt it was kind of unnecessary. I think, I don't think Logan and Jean needed to have a love story. I think he could have easily focused that more on Scott and Jean because they were, already together. Logan already has enough story in this movie where he's trying to figure out, what his backstory is as well. There is a slight complaint with this movie. Yeah, Cyclops is not really in this much. He's in the first act, spends a lot of the second act away, and then he comes back in the end of the third act, and then for a quarter of that, he's like under William Stryker's control, which is really upsetting and sad to see, because considering how cool the character he was and how big his role was going to be in X-Men 3 before Bryan Singer dropped out and everything like that, which is really heartbreaking to see, to be honest. I think that sucked quite a bit that he was regulated to kind of a minor role in this movie, despite the fact that he's supposed to be, the leader of the X-Men. It's supposed to be Scott. It's not supposed to be Wolverine. But we get it. Wolverine's a more popular character. He's spun off into his own series. He's a badass. We understand that. X-Men. Oh, and that final scene with the president in the White House as well, when they visit him. Charles freezes everybody and they speak to the president. That final line where Logan just goes, "We'll be watching." It's so badass and so cool, man. Wolverine is such a cool character. Granted, I don't think he should have been the main character in every movie, but he's still a pretty decent character all the same. And that was X-Men 2, a much more better movie than the first X-Men movie. Obviously, if you want to start with the first one, by all means, just do it. But, if you want to kick things off with a really solid and really great entry, this is probably your best shot, best starting point with the X-Men movies. This is such a good movie. Action's better, the characters are better, the stakes are higher, the story is a lot more stronger, the twists and turns are a lot more better, the ending's really emotional and really heartfelt, and everything like that. I think it's especially that last scene where Press X just goes, I think everything's going to be all right now, and you see the Phoenix in the water and everything like that. Such a good ending. I would recommend X-Men 2, X-Men United, whatever you want to fucking call it. Go watch it. Go rewatch it. If you've not watched it in a while, go rewatch it. It's such a good movie. Basically, it is such a good movie. Go watch it. It is amazing. It's a really good movie. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the next movie we're going to talk about, which is X-Men 3: The Last Stand. This one kind of sucks. It's not. Oh, look, this is compared to the other shit that we've got to talk about in this retrospective. Because trust me, when these movies get bad, they get bad. This one's not the worst. But it's definitely just a disappointment. It's really, it kind of suffers from that same problem that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suffered from, that a lot of other superhero movies were suffering from at the time, when they just felt a bit too bloated. It felt like too much was going on. There was too much plot, too much story. There's a lot of plot points in this just don't get focused on at all. Obviously we're trying to do the Dark Phoenix storyline. We set up in X-Men 2, and obviously we got to carry it on with X-Men 3. I get that. So why is there another side story about a cure? And you'd think they don't even intertwine with one another. And it's like both these storylines are good, but like the cure, for example, that's a really interesting concept. Like a really good like discussion, a really good debate that could be had about a mutant cure. You know, like say there was a cure for homosexuality or transsexuality or non-binary people or anything like that, which obviously obviously there isn't and never will be, because you know that thing cannot be cured. And if you think it can be cured, you're a fucking moron and a bigot, and you should get the fuck out of here. I will not have bigots watching my podcast. Get the fuck out. I do not care. That's a very interesting debate to be had. It's a very interesting concept to be had, but the problem is it never gets the focus it needs. It's brought up a bunch of times, sure, but it's never explored enough. It's never talked about enough. There's like one conversation about it, and then like that's just it. It's just kind of there. It's just there. I'm not really sure what that is. Like, for example, we have new characters like Kitty Pryde, who's played by Elliot Page, and Angel is played by whoever played Angel in this movie, because I don't know who the actor's name, or if he even carried on with acting. I didn't really recognize him or anything else. You know, Kitty Pryde, she's a good character. Don't get me wrong. Elliot Page did a really good job. With this role and everything like that. He was able to do a really good job playing that character as well. Did the best what he was given as well, considering that he was treated really badly by Brett Ratner. Yeah, and it's not, I mean, this movie, yeah, and again, getting off that track, let's go back to the characters. Like, you know, Kitty Pryde, she's in the movie, sure, but she doesn't really get like a lot of focus on her role. Doesn't really get focused on enough. In this movie, there's some weird like love triangle supposedly between her, Rogue, and Bobby, which just doesn't get the focus. They get like 2 scenes together, her and Bobby, and that was pretty much it. There's that skating scene, and then there's the opening sequence where they're doing the battle in the hologram and everything like that. And then you have Angel, who's barely in this movie. He like, why was he in this movie? Like, he's not even that important, man. He has like 5 scenes. It's like, it's not even that important, to be honest. His fucking dad's in this movie more than he is. Which is just, I mean, I don't know. It just felt, that drama between him and his dad just felt really forced and everything like that. Scott being killed off, it just feels like a waste in this movie. Like, why not have him, like, this could have been his moment, like his time to shine, to, you know, be the leader of the X-Men, to make the hard choices, you know. I think, and that was supposed to be the way they were going to go, but I don't know why they thought killing him off would be a good idea. Like why kill him off? Like people that he literally wasn't even in, like, he was barely in the last movie, because he spent most of that being, you know, he spent most of the second act in there, and then this one he's in the first act and that's it. He gets killed off halfway through, and like, this could have been his movie. Like, this could have been, you know, Professor X. Like maybe you could have it where, you know, like, you still have it where he's mourning Jean's. He can mourn Jean's death, and to the point where, you know, Xavier offers it to doesn't offer it to Storm, but offers leadership to Logan. And then Logan, you know, he doesn't want to be the leader of the X-Men because he doesn't think of himself as leader material as well, and everything. So this could be Scott's chance to, and when Jean comes back from the grave and he learns what's happened, and she kills Professor, he decides, no, this is my time. I need to stand up. I need to lead them. And then you could have where he comes into the final battle like last minute, and he starts charging the X-Men and leading them as kind of the leader that he's supposed to be, because none of these movies even attempted at that. Really, I mean, even the new films didn't do it very well. Like, I mean, we'll get to Dark Phoenix later on, much later on. I would love to, you know, just wait until then, but yeah, the whole idea of the cure as well, it's handled so poorly and everything like that, you know, there's no need for a mutant cure. Like, the mutants don't need to be cured or anything like that. It just kind of feels really forced. And then yeah, it kind of makes you root for Magneto, which is not really the point of Magneto. You're not supposed to root for Magneto. Like, so when they do the whole, oh yeah, they're gonna kill the kid with the cure and everything like that, it just seems a bit like forced. It kind of seems a bit like, it just feels a little bit like, oh yeah, you're not supposed, oh shit, we've made people root for Magneto, have him kill a kid, that'll fix it, that'll make you not root for him. It just feels a little bit forced and not really it's not really interesting either. And then the Dark Phoenix stuff as well, because you got that combined with the cure, that never gets focused on, never gets explored. You don't really delve into the idea that maybe what Charles did maybe wasn't right or wasn't correct. That could have been an interesting debate. That could have been another interesting debate to have had. What is what Charles did correct? Was it good? Did he actually do the right thing? But again, it never gets explored. There's one conversation about it, and it's a lot like it's. This movie feels a bit like Spider-Man 3 in a way. Actually, this movie feels more like Spider-Man 3 than Amazing Spider-Man 2. Where it's too bloated. There's lots of stuff going on, lots of plot points going on and stuff like that. The major difference between those two though is that with Spider-Man 3 you got the thing that was a good movie just coming out, trying to get out of that kind of mess that Sony had led Sony led Sam Raimi into making, compared to this movie where there wasn't even an attempt to try and salvage it. This movie stuff just happens. It just happens in this movie, and it's just all random and stuff like that. I don't like how Rogue actually does get the cure. I get they try and pass off being like, oh no, she did it for her. She did it for herself and everything like that. But it's like, but it's like that's not the whole point of the X-Men though. They're supposed to embrace their powers, love their powers. It's supposed to be a metaphor for oppression, racism, and all that stuff. It's supposed to be to love yourself and to accept yourself and everything like that. And that's one. It sucks because again, she's missing for the final battle. We had her throughout this whole trilogy from the very first movie, and then she's nowhere to be seen. Okay, cool. Beast was really good in this movie. He was a really good character. Kelsey Grammer was so good as Beast in this movie. His interactions with Charles and Wolverine. He got some really funny lines as well. I love the line when in the final battle when Logan's I thought you were a diplomat, and he's like, there comes a time in every man's life. You get that point, and he just goes back to fighting people. Those special effects as well are really, really good. It really sucks how because I did watch the Marvels a few days ago. Actually, no, I watched it yesterday. What am I talking about? A few days ago. Okay. No, I watched the Marvels yesterday, and I did watch the end credit scene with him in it because he comes back as Beast in that movie, in the end credit scene with Mark Rambo and all that stuff. You've probably watched it on YouTube before. You know what I'm talking about. His look in that. Well, I do appreciate them wanting to make him look more like his X-Men animated series counterpart. I mean, man, it's just a big blob of CG. That's just it. And I just miss the fact that the other movies were able to get that down in a practical effect. I mean, that just looks so much better to me than CG Beast, which sucks. I mean, I get why maybe Kelsey Grammer didn't want to do the makeup, but he was willing to do it for Days of Future Past. I don't know why he wouldn't have been willing to do it again. Again, but then Marvel over relies on CG so much nowadays. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The de-aging of Charles and Eric are terrible. It's really terrible. Even by 2006 standards, it looks really bad. It just it looks so off. It looks so off. In de-aging, man, I've talked about this before, but I'm just not the biggest fan of de-aging in general. I don't think actors should ever be de-aged. I think some actors you can get away with it, like Samuel L. Jackson, you can de-age him really well and everything like that, but most actors can't do it, and Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen happen to be one of them as well. You just can't do it and without it looking like a fucking mess. Like a really big fucking mess. What else as well? There are some funny lines. Again, going back to some of the comedy, there are some funny lines in this, like during the final battle when Logan hits the guy in the balls and he just goes, "Grow those back," and then when Bobby and Pyro are having that fight and Bobby finally becomes Iceman proper. He's made out of ice and everything, goes fully Iceman and everything on him, and then he's like, and Pyro's like, "You should have stayed in school." And then he just knocks him out and he's like, "Never should have left." And then they rip off Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is also another terrible movie as well. The worst Harry Potter movie as Goblet of Fire. Fight me on that one, but it really is. And they rip it off because obviously they do the whole, because with Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire, there's that thing where Harry and Voldemort have their wands kind of connect with each other, and then you have ice and fire connecting with each other. Do you know what I mean? There's that scene. I think you know the scene I'm talking about if you've rewatched this recently. And yeah, so overall, Honestly, I mean, and again, like, and the ending as well is a bit weird when they depower Magneto, with the cure as well. That's another thing as well. I didn't really like how they killed off Rebecca Redmayne's Mystique. Again, she's barely in this movie, as well. Mystique was such a cool character, and they just depower her. She gets one big action sequence, and she's immediately depowered, and it's because it's like, oh yeah, we've got all these other mutants. We don't have room for you, Rebecca. So we're just gonna have you in one scene. We're gonna depower you. We're gonna have you in another. It's just. Oh, and the Magneto kind of just ditching her, and even though it was like she sacrificed herself for him, like he doesn't even show any appreciation, and I don't know, that kind of seems a little bit out of character for him. Like, I mean, I can understand like if Mystique like voluntarily got the cure that he would disown her, but the fact that like she sacrificed herself for him, and he's like he could have been like, oh, don't worry, my dear, we'll find a way to get your power back or something like that. But no, he just like, oh, I'm sorry, dear, you're just not one of us anymore. You just don't want to us anymore. You know, I know you stood by my side and been loyal to me, but you just don't want to us anymore. Sorry. And he just sort of walks off, and yeah, and it's just like, it just kind of feels a bit forced to like try and make Magneto an evil, try and make him evil in this, like, because obviously he does have a good point with the cure and everything like that not being good, and yeah. So I mean, overall, this movie is just a fucking mess. Too much going on, some funny jokes. That's pretty much it. This thing needed to be cut down massively. I think juggling both the Dark Pheonix, even I've not talked about that yet, haven't I? The Dark Pheonix storyline, because again, it's like it's bogged. It's like it's sharing. It's because it's such a big, huge like story, and it's sharing this Cure storyline. That it just kind of, it's like the movie's fighting with itself to like, oh no, we need to focus on this now. We go like it just doesn't really go well, and yeah, this movie, it's you know what, I've rambled on about this, so let's just end this right now. This movie sucks. It's a mess. It's always been a mess. If you like this movie, all the power to you. Honestly, if you like this movie, all the power to you. It's not as bad as some of the other X-Men movies we're going to get into later on in this retrospective, but trust me, this was the start of the very slippery-ish slope that the X-Men movies found themselves on. And then after that, we had X-Men First Class. Yeah, X-Men First Class. There was no X-Men movies after Last Stand, until X-Men First Class. That's the next X-Men movie in this retrospective we're going to be talking about today. At least, I wish that was the words that were coming out of my mouth, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Let's talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine. Sigh. Oh god. So for these retrospectives, I like to make notes on the movies I'm talking about, so that just rough little notes, not in-depth ones, just quick little bullet points, so I can talk about, you know, especially when I'm doing retrospectives, I'm doing like mini reviews, if you will, about the movies in the series, so I can't really spend too much time focusing on going too much in depth with them as I would do if I was doing a standalone movie as well. For X-Men Origins Wolverine, I just have one note, and it says to just rant about how much this movie sucks. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna rant. I don't care if my points make no sense, because this movie is just horrendous. This movie is terrible. This movie is an abomination. This is the worst X-Men movie ever made. Like, it really is. I know some people would say, nah, Dark Phoenix and New Mutants, but nah, you know what? Those ones are at least somewhat competent. We'll get into those when we get into those towards the end. But this one is just this one is so horrible. It's so awful. It's just I can't even. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It's like oh my god, I get those behind the scenes troubles. I really do. Yes, we'll start with that. We'll start behind the scenes troubles of this movie. So obviously with movies, you can't. The thing with movies is that if a movie turns out bad, you can't necessarily pin the blame on one person. I know a lot of people like to blame the filmmakers usually the directors, because they seem to think that, particularly these big budget movies, that the directors are the one in charge. But in reality, it's actually the producers that are the ones in charge of these movies. But at the same time, you can't really blame them either, because it's a collaborative effort. You know, there's loads of people involved in making a movie. You can't necessarily pin the blame on one person. At the same time, you can't really blame everyone though. Like, it's just one of those things where if you make a bad movie, you just made a bad movie. People came together, they made a movie. Unfortunately, it just didn't turn out very well. You know, that's just the reality of making art. It's like sometimes, no matter how hard you work, on it, and no matter how well you work together with everybody, not everything you're going to make is going to be gold. You are going to make something that's going to turn out to be crap, unfortunately. And I think that we need to really learn this when it comes to making art. We can't just expect, when obviously, yeah, we can vent our disappointments and vent our criticisms on bad movies and stuff like that, but we can't just go, oh, this filmmaker sucks. You can't, basically, when it comes to bad movies, you can't necessarily always pin the blame on one person. That being said, though, X-Men Origins Wolverine is kind of one of the few examples where you actually can. You can pretty much pin all the blame on Tom Rothman, who was the head of Fox at the time. This guy hated superhero movies. Like, he really hated them. He never liked them. He was the main reason why a Deadpool movie got blocked for years and years, and he was always interfering on these movies. He was the reason why Bryan Singer quit X-Men 3, because he was just such a pain in the ass to work with. As well, I know he's the head of Sony now, Sony Pictures. I don't know how that's going, so I've not really looked into it, to be honest. I know about this time at Fox and everything like that. He didn't want Sentinels in X-Men 3 as well. Like, Sentinels was supposed to be in X-Men 3, not just in the opening sequence, but in the whole movie that was supposed to be in, because obviously you got Trask in there in that movie in X-Men 3. But he was like, no giant robots. That's what he said, no giant robots. Okay, apparently I want to see more giant robots. And with this movie, it was pretty much the same thing. Gavin Hood, who directed this movie, he wanted to make it more, darker and grittier and more serious tone, something more akin to, the Wolverine that came out much later on. Or even Logan. He wanted to do it in more of a PG version of that, so to speak. But I wanted to delve into Wolverine's backstory. I believe he wanted it to end with Wolverine actually getting the Weapon X, going through the Weapon X program. But Tom Rothman was basically like, no, I want it to be goofy. I want it to be lighthearted. I want us to be able to sell toys. I want this and that. And they would constantly argue all the time. And it got to the point where Tom Rothman would literally just, like, he would ghost direct scenes he wouldn't ghost direct scenes. That was it. He would have, like, sets get repainted when Gavin Hood was in his trailer. He would, like, push the movie in a direction where Gavin Hood at the end of it didn't even recognize the project anymore, and he was such a pain in the ass on this movie. And it's just he pushed for Deadpool to have his mouth sewn shut, which is just like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you making these? Why are you being like this? Like, this is not how a producer is supposed to act. A producer is supposed to support his creatives. Like, this is not how you do it. You don't just, and then you can literally see it as well. It's just, and the writing is terrible. A lot of the lines make no sense as well. Like, when, oh my god, what's a bad line in this movie? There's shitloads of them, but I can't really remember them because I've seen this movie twice now. Yeah, I've only seen this movie twice, by the way. The first time was in 2013 when the Wolverine was coming out, because one of my siblings, they were very into the X-Men, and my mum brought them that movie on DVD back in 2009. But I never watched it. And then when I became more internet savvy back in like the early 2010s, I watched a lot of online reviewers like Nostalgia Critic and Blockbuster Buster and stuff like that, and watched their thoughts and opinions on X-Men Origins Wolverine, and I learned how bad it was, learned how terrible it was. And then when the Wolverine was coming out, I was like, I want to see how bad this movie is. So I watched it, and I never watched it again until this retrospective. So I stayed away for a very, very long time. I always skip this one whenever I'm rewatching it. There's so many bad lines of fucking dialogue. Like when Logan calls Blob Bub, but he thinks he's called him Blob, and it's like, they don't sound anything alike. What the fuck? Okay, when Sabretooth is like, when that guy who's played by the same actor who played Mary in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I forgot he was even in this movie. I feel sorry for him. That guy was in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he went from that to this. He went from, the guy who played Mary in Lord of the Rings went from that to Origins Wolverine, man. Like, that's just sad. That's just sad. When Sabretooth is about to kill him, and he's just like, oh no, I'm not afraid to die. And he's like, how do you know? I tried it before. And it's like, oh god, it's so bad. It's so bad. It's so fucking bad. Logan being in Canada, residing in Canada, because obviously he's supposed to be Canadian, and nobody there actually sounds Canadian. Has anyone ever noticed that? Like, nobody whenever he's in Canada, no one sounds Canadian. The special effects, oh my god, the special effects, they're terrible. They're unfinished. Literally, there's like when they're in the jet and they're in the plane, and when the plane's flying around, and it just looks horrible. It looks so unfinished. And it's like, last year we learned so much about, these past few years actually, no, not last year, the past couple of years we've learned so much about how terrible, VFX artists are treated in the industry and have been for years. I cannot imagine being them working on trying to get the VFX of this movie done, because Jesus Christ, like, it must have been so fucking painful to work on. Really must have been painful to work on, and particularly when you see the final movie and you're watching it back and you're just like, they look so unfinished. Like that scene of the plane as well, like going back to the thing with them on the plane, with all the team and everything like that, and Deadpool's there and everything. When the plane's flying around, it looks like something out of a PS2 cutscene. It looks like something out of a video game. It doesn't look something out of a movie. The claws when he's in the bathroom scene. What happened? Like, what actually happened here? Why do they look so goofy? Like, why? Why do they look so goofy? They do. Oh my god, they look like something of a Saturday morning cartoon. When you go from the first X-Men movie that was that was made back in 1999. I thought it was supposed to get better. What happens here? What's happened here? The final battle where when they sew Deadpool's mouth shut, and then, oh my god, another like bad line of dialogue is when he's trying to get everyone's powers and combine them into this pool, the Deadpool. Oh, it's so bad. It's so fucking bad. And Patrick Stewart's in this, and he's de-aged again. It looks even worse than it did in X-Men 3. Scott's in this for some reason. I don't know why he's here. To be completely honest with you, as well, I don't have no clue why Scott Summers is in this movie. There's nothing with Logan and Sabretooth's relationship. You don't really get a sense of them being brothers. It's bad. It's bad. This is the worst action movie. It's broken beyond repair. It's just a terrible movie. That got badly affected by a greedy executive who just wanted to control everybody, and that's literally just it. As well, I think there's like one scene I like, and that's with Wade in the elevator, and he's making jokes, and then and Wolverine's just like, God, you ever shut up, pal? Like, I like that scene. I'm looking forward to seeing how they interact in Deadpool 3, because obviously that's R-rated, and he's going to be swearing. We're going to hear Hugh Jackman say the word fuck so much. I cannot wait for that. It'll be good to see him on screen properly as well, together properly. Working. You know what I mean. Yeah, X-Men vs. Wolverine. Jesus Christ. Okay, right. So for reals this time, let's get to X-Men First Class. The first prequel tells the story of Charles and Eric, how they came together and everything. Quite loosely though, because this was around the time when the continuity in the X-Men movies were really starting to become noticeable as well. Things weren't really adding up. Things weren't really making sense at that time. But despite all that though, I still really enjoyed it as well. I still really enjoy this one. It feels very new and very different. Matthew Vaughn was able to bring a different kind of change in pace with it as well, make it feel quite comic booky, more bit comic booky with like the panel transitions and everything like that, particularly when they're training and everything like that. But it's also good seeing the origins of everything, the origins of Cerebro, origins of Charles. You get to learn about him and Mystique's relationship as well, which she's played in this movie by Jennifer Lawrence in this movie, which is really cool. Don't really understand why Rebecca Revmain made a cameo in this, it was kind of odd why that. I don't really understand that. Why. I loved Hugh Jackman's cameo though. The F-bomb was really good, really funny as well. Shame they really overplayed the PG-13 F-bombing in the further movies, but we'll get to that later on. But I really do enjoy this movie. I do like how you get to see more of it as well. I do like the opening sequence, for example, where they cut in between footage from the first X-Men movie and from First Class. Like they do reuse footage from it, which I find really quite interesting. How are they able to splice those two together, and then you learn what happened after that, like after Eric got knocked out by the Nazi, and when he sees his mother get killed. His mother get killed. It's really effective, and it's really sad, and it's really sad to see that. And the fact that he's trying to find Sebastian Shaw, who's played by Kevin Bacon in this movie. You really feel that, and Sebastian is really a really good villain. He's just an asshole, really, and when he kills Darwin, as well, that was really interesting to see. As well, and he's like, absorb this. It's like, oh god. And then Darwin just turns into rock and just crumbles, which is really cool. Actually, I really like that. And yeah, so it's just really cool seeing the friendship grow and everything like that. Charles and Eric are able to maintain a really sweet relationship, and the fact that it's a prequel as well, it works. It kind of works in the movie's favor, because obviously we, the audience, we know that Charles and Eric are going to become somewhat rivals. By the end of this movie, we know that Charles is going to get injured somehow, and so we can't. As an audience member, when you're watching it for the first time, you're kind of anticipating it, and everything like that, and then and you're buying into a relationship so well. Part of you doesn't really want them to fall out, and you want them to stay friends, because of how like sweet their relationship is. Because the fact that Charles believes in Eric and has hope for Eric, and cares for Eric as well. And Eric at the same point as well cares for Charles. Like when the fact that Eric was the one that essentially caused his injury when he, had the bullet ricocheted and hit Charles in the back, and then he's got Charles in his arms, and he's just saying, this is what they want. This is what they want. They want to turn us against each other, as well. And it's just very affectionate as well. And Charles and Raven's relationship is really good as well. You really feel that kind of brother and sister thing going on there with them. Jennifer Lawrence is really good in this, as well. It's a shame that she lost so much interest further on down the line, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But she is really good as well. I like the Mutant and Proud thing. I think is really quite unique and really quite cool thing to see. And I like how she her whole arc in this movie is learning how to embrace her power and to love her power as well. There's that really nice scene with her and Magneto where he's like, I want the real Raven, and then she becomes her blue self, which I really like. In that, I also liked who's it that played the Maura Mataga as Rose Byrne. I think she did a really good job as well in this movie. I think she was really great. I like how she befriends Charles and how they have a bit of a side relationship there, which is quite sweet. And yeah, as I said before, Hugh Jackman's cameo is really nice and really funny. I was surprised Emma Frost is in this movie, considering that she was also in X-Men Origins as well. Because again, this is when the continuity really starts to not add up like at all, which is a bit weird, but okay. Nicholas Holt's really good as Beast. It's really good seeing Beast again, because we've not seen that character since Last Stand, and it's good to get more of him. You learn about him and Charles's friendship and how he became part of creating Cerebro and creating the school and for everything as well. And that's another thing. That's probably a big problem with this movie, is continuity as well. It was around this time when the continuity between these movies were really starting to show their age and everything like that. Like how Magneto and Charles part ways at the end of this movie, but in X-Men 3: The Last Stand, Magneto came with him to pick up Jean. Okay. In the first movie, he says that it's Magneto who helps him build Cerebro, but in this movie, it's Hank, which is a bit odd. And there's attempts to try and connect it together somewhat. Like they try to loosely connect it, like how it's kind of like to try to connect things quite loosely, but it just never really works out. It doesn't really work out. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. There's a good effort to it, but and that's probably one of the reasons why they did Days of Future Past, to try and reboot and reset the timeline, so to speak, which sucks, but it's okay. The action's great. It's a lot less flashy than Matthew Vaughn's other movies like Kick-Ass and Kingsman, but I guess maybe because he was working in a PG-13 environment, he wasn't able to really flourish and shine, but he's still able to do a good job with the action sequences. Even from a PG-13, even through the PG-13 lens, he's still able to really really make it work, and the action's really intense. It's really suspenseful. It's really quite, you're on the edge of your seat. You are on the edge of your seat for all of it. You do want seeing the final scene on the beach and everything like that, with the submarines and everything like that as well. It's really intense, really suspenseful, and you're just waiting for that moment for Magneto to and Charles to fight and fall out and everything like that. And yeah, and I think overall though, it's a great prequel, a really good prequel, and it was really needed because the last prequel we got was Origins, and it really sucked. It really, really sucked. But yeah, it's a good overall. It's a really great prequel. I recommend you watch it. It tends to get a bit overlooked. It tends to be not overlooked, but a lot of people don't really seem to talk about it too much. They tend to jump straight to Days of Future Past, which I understand because that's the better movie in a way. In a lot of way, it does kind of emulate what the first X-Men movie did, where they were going back to basics. They were kind of setting up something brand new. They were kind of playing it safe a little bit. Not really taking any big swings, any big hits or anything like that, because obviously after Last Stand and Origins both did poorly with critics and audiences, except for they did well box office wise, but audiences hated them, and I think they were worried that they'd lose interest. So Matthew Vaughn came along and said, I've got a good story to tell, and he told it, and it was successful enough to the point where they greenlit a bunch more sequels. But yeah, so overall, First Class, still a good movie. Give it a watch. Give it a watch if you want to, if you can. It's on Disney Plus. All these movies are on Disney Plus. So get yourself on Disney Plus and give it a watch, because it is actually a pretty decent time. Now let's go on to our next movie, X-Men: Days of Future Past. So this movie is really great. It's really good. Hang on, wait, am I forgetting something? I don't think I am. I'm pretty certain. No, I'm pretty certain it's Days of Future Past that's next. Yeah, I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Oh wait. Oh no. There was another movie in between them, wasn't there? Yeah. Let's talk about the Wolverine, and that's kind of the big not the big negative of the Wolverine. It's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just not very memorable. That's kind of the problem. I mean, I was talking about how Days of Future Past tends to get underlooked, but this one, I don't think does anyone even mention this one anymore. I don't think anyone ever does. I think this one, everyone forgets this one because it's just not very memorable as well. There's just something about it where you watch it, you're entertained by it, you like it, and then you go off, you do something else, and you just forget it ever exists. Like you ask someone to list up all the X-Men movies, I 100% guarantee you they will leave this one out because it gets that forgotten in the cycle of the X-Men films, and it's really sad to see because this is actually a really good movie. I really love the idea of Logan having his healing powers suppressed, and how you see him going through stuff that he's never gone through before, like how he's not healing, how he needs to go to like a doctor's to get treated and everything like that. He's never had to do that before. Ever, because he's always got his healing factor to fall back on. But I do also like how that contrasts with his other conflict where he's kind of wants to die because he's lived too long. He's a hermit now. He's not in the X-Mansion anymore. He left after X-Men 3 because he was too, I guess, overwhelmed with grief and guilt over having to kill Jean. He's having nightmares about it quite a lot, and he just kind of wants to die, and he feels like it's his time to go, and then he gets asked to come to Japan to help to say goodbye to his old soldier that he helped save once, only to find out that soldier is actually evil and wants to steal his healing factor so he can live longer, which is very sad, which is extremely sad to see, really, because you see this guy, this guy admires Logan, admires Wolverine, and then he turns out to be the bad guy, which is still a good twist. I can't lie, like I did not see that coming. I actually did not see that coming when I first saw this movie, when I watched this movie for the first time. But yeah, the idea of his healing power getting suppressed and stuff, and him, realizing, oh shit, I kind of need my healing power. Yeah, I think it's probably a good thing that I heal. Like, I don't want to die just yet. I think people need me. Everyone needs me in this life, in my life, and everything like that. So I do like that idea as well. James Mangold, this is his first time jumping into the world of the X-Men, and he's able to bring something new to the table. Again, he's working through a PG-13 lens, and I feel like, as I said in when we talked about Dial of Destiny, I think particularly when it comes to action sequences, I think James Mangold works the best when he's working through an R-rated lens, where he's able to be a bit more, way more free with the action. He's able to go more blood, he's able to go more gory, he's able to get more real with it, he's able to go further with it compared to a PG-13 where he has to kind of restrict himself a little bit more. But the action, that's saying though, the action's still really fucking good in this movie. As well, the action sequences are really great. The one on the bullet train, that's really great, that's really creative, that's really cool, that's really suspenseful and everything like that. The action sequences when he gets to the small village and he's got all the ninjas, Logan's trying to fight off all the ninjas and everything like that as well. And you get that second PG-13 F-bomb where he goes, "Go fuck yourself, pretty boy." It's like, oh, it's so good. Hugh Jackman's great as Wolverine again. He's much better here than he is in Origins. He wasn't bad in Origins by any means necessary, but you could tell even he was a bit lost in that movie. I think in this one he was able to flourish a bit better with everything that was going on. So I mean, there are some things in there, like Viper's not a very memorable villain. She's just kind of there. She's just kind of it's a little bit whatever as well. And who else was not that memorable? His relationship with Mariko is not that believable as well. They don't really have a lot of great chemistry with each other, to be honest. And because he's spending the whole movie just pining over Jean, it's a little bit like, wait, are you in love with her, or like what's going on there? The final act just gets back to being a little bit more goofy and silly in places, very comic booky, but that's not really a bad thing. They're still very entertaining and everything like that. Like when he grabs the samurai sword with two hands and he's like, "Hey, Bob!" and it's like, oh my god, that's such a good line, to be fair. And then when he finds out it's the old man, and he like, and then he's like, "You want me to say goodbye? Sayonara!" And he just throws him off the cliff. That's such a badass moment. I can't lie for that. And there's some continuity errors as well, like how they think, for some reason, they think that in this movie that his healing is due to the adamantium, but that's not true. His healing is due to he's always been able to heal, and the adamantium does nothing to it. If anything, in the next Wolverine movie, they establish that the adamantium is the thing that's poisoning him and is actually killing him. So how does that work? So like when they're sucking the adamantium out of his body, how does that work? Like, how is he getting old? I don't know. That just doesn't really work. Then you have the end credit scene with Magneto and Charles, like how Magneto, because obviously in X-Men 3, Magneto moves at the end, Magneto moves the chest piece a little bit, and which establishes that the cure is not actually permanent. It does wear off after a while, which is probably for the best, and I think they were probably going to do that at some point anyways. And then Magneto is able to hold him down with his powers, even though Logan doesn't have his adamantium skeleton anymore. So how's he like, what? I mean, maybe he's got something metal in his pocket or something, but like, I don't know, that's just a bit like, what the fuck. Speaking of which, the end credit scene is really nice. It's really good seeing Logan reunited with Professor X after his death in X-Men 3: The Last Stand, and everything. It's a really sweet moment for those two. And then when he's like, oh shit, wait, him and Magneto are teaming up, and he realizes that there's bigger shit going on, and we find out in the next movie, Days of Future Past, that there is much bigger shit going on. But overall, the Wolverine, it's still a much better movie than Origins. It's just really forgettable. Like, it's odd. It's an entertaining movie. Like, it's a really good entertaining flick, but it's just not very memorable. Like, you're not going to really remember it much. I bet you'll forget about it the moment you stop watching it, but it's not a bad film. It's got some interesting concepts, got some interesting themes in there that they do explore, but overall, it's just kind of there. It just kind of exists, and that's pretty much it for that movie. So let's go on to the next film, X-Men: Days of Future Past. This is literally hands down one of the best X-Men movies in a long time. After X-Men 3, after Origins didn't do very well, after First Class was pretty decent and Wolverine was pretty decent, this was the first truly great X-Men movie of all time. It's not all time, but in a very long time. It's a great job merging the old cast with the new cast, without having to actually properly, reboot it from the ground up, as well. You do get the feeling, and you do get the feeling about the Sentinels finally playing a big role in this. You do get the feeling that this is the biggest threat the X-Men have ever faced, particularly in that opening sequence as well, which is very impactful. You see, like when the Sentinels are firing, when they're firing off the Sentinels, and you just see them, snap Iceman's head, like just clean off, and then they crush it, and it's just, oh my god, it's so. As well, and they kill Cyclops and everything like that. You truly understand the kind of the. You truly understand what threat they're under at the moment. Like the Sentinels are really fucking terrifying. And, and earlier on in the movie when they're like killing Storm, killing Bishop, and killing everybody, but this time it's permanent because they can't run. Kitty Pryde, she can't send them back in time again because she has to like send Logan back in time to stop all this from happening and to change the outcome of their fate and everything like that, which I like that. I like how the theme in this movie is fate. Like it's discussing the outcome of people's fate and everything like that, and how one you can change it, you can change your fate, and everything like that. And I really like that. That's kind of a big theme in this movie. The opening sequence as well, yeah, very impactful when you see the humans and everything, and the mutants, mutants and humans who have been in solitary confinement, who have been branded with numbers and markings and everything like that, and who because the humans helped the mutants out, because obviously the Sentinels then started targeting humans who they sent to carried the X gene and everything like that. But yeah, so like that was really cool. The reason for sending Logan back in time, again, it feels a little forced. It kind of just feels like, oh, we really need this. We know that in the comic book it's Kitty Pryde, but we kind of need it to be Wolverine. So we're just gonna say that if you send somebody back in time like this way, like their mind breaks or something. It's, I don't know. It just feels like another way to try and like, we gotta make this about Wolverine. We gotta put him in front and center in this movie again, which kind of sucks a little bit. I get Wolverine is the most marketable character. He's the most popular and everything like that. I completely understand that. I completely get that as well. I kind of would have preferred it a little bit if they actually did actually follow the comic book a little bit, where they where it was Kitty Pryde sent back instead of Wolverine, as well. Like that would have been really cool to see, and it would have given Elliot Page a really great performance. Not that he gives a great performance as Kitty in this, don't get me wrong, particularly when Logan stabs Kitty by accident and she's losing a lot of blood and everything like that. Like that's a pretty cool, that's a pretty decent performance as well. Just seeing that suffering that she's going through, but she's still got to hold on to Logan's mind as much as possible. Because if not, then they're all fucked, basically. Bryan Singer, who was able to bring that flair and that darkness back from the first two movies, and once again, focus more on the theme of oppression and being different and everything like that, but really home in on it. And that final monologue by Magneto, where he's like, "I've given you a glimpse into our power. You'll come out of hiding, mutant brothers and sisters. This is our time," and everything like that. Jennifer Lawrence as well does a really great performance in this movie. I think she's really good as Raven, really impactful. I like how this movie was essentially about Raven, not turning Raven evil, and how she was able to become free, how she was able to again change her fate and become free of all that Mystique stuff, and she's able to do whatever she wants now. She's able to live freely until they roll back in X-Men Apocalypse, which we'll talk about that in a bit later on. But so I like that aspect. Michael Fassbender was great as Magneto. I completely forgot. Yeah, Michael Fassbender, James, and he said James Franco there. Ugh, wrong James. People actually like James Franco. No, they don't. James McAvoy, that's it. People actually like James McAvoy. James Franco, nobody likes. For very good reason, because he's a creepy widow. And yeah, James McAvoy does a great job as Xavier. I love the scene when, I think the best emotional moment for me in this movie though is when younger Charles has the conversation with older Charles, because we've all wondered that. We've all thought to ourselves, what would I say to my younger self? Or we have the time where, like, if I could go back and meet my younger self, I would say this to them. And that's what kind of Professor X is actually doing. He's actually having that conversation with his younger self. He's actually helping his younger self out, and he's actually helping his younger self to improve. And he's like, just because somebody stumbles and loses their way, that doesn't mean they're lost forever. That's such a really powerful scene. I really love it. And I love how it's Logan who's who's getting him to that moment. Professor X helped Logan out so much during the first two movies, helping him regain his memories and everything like that, and teaching him really good lessons. And this is essentially Logan repaying him the favor. He even says, I was most helpless student, but you opened my mind. You made me see who I was. And this is him repaying Professor X back for that as well. And the scene where Professor X is about to take some of the medicine that Hank has created to control his mutation, and you can see Logan's face where he's trying really hard to he's begging Charles, don't take it, please don't take it, we need you, Charles, we really need you. And then and the scene as well when we meet Cerebro again, and it's designed exactly like how it was back in X-Men 1, and that music where it's like do do do, like that big epic music. That I really like that. The theme tune. I completely forgot to mention that when I was talking about X-Men 2, the theme tune, the like that theme tune is actually really cool, and I really like that theme tune. I think that suits the X-Men really well. The theme tune in the first X-Men movie, the that thing, that sucked. That really sucked. The one in X-Men 3, I can't even remember that, but I know it was different. And I don't really care for it, to be honest. And then Origins and First Class and the Wolverine, fuck them. Fuck that music. Well, actually, no, the music in those music are really good, but there's just no memorable opening theme in it, like these Singer X-Men, the Bryan Singer X-Men movies, where it's like da da la and it's like that's such a cool theme tune. But yeah, anyway, so I'm rambling now, so I'm gonna quickly wind this up. So. Yeah, ended on a high note, and it looked like the timeline had been fixed. Technically, I like the ending when Logan sees Charles and he's like, "It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody," and him and Charles are bonding over. That's another thing as well. I really like how Logan actually calls him Charles in this. Like they've known each other for so long at the point that he feels like he can just call him Charles and not Professor. I really like that about their relationship. I really like the scene as well when Magneto and Charles reconcile in the future. And he's like, all those years wasted fighting each other, Charles, only to get a precious few of them back. And then they shake hands and everything like that. They've completely made up. And then the Sentinels come in because the Sentinels are about to kill him. And then Jennifer and Mystique changes the history, manages to change history, and then just walks off into the sunset, and it's all really good. Until she then pretends to be Stryker for some reason, even though that doesn't happen. Nothing comes of that in the next movie, which I'm not really sure why they did that, but oh well. But yeah, so ended on a high note, and it looked like things were going to get better for the X-Men timeline from there. Didn't last long though, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, X-Men Days of Future Past, one of the best X-Men movies ever made. Go watch it. It's on Disney Plus. Give it a watch, and you'll enjoy it. You'll really love it. It's a really, really great movie. And then in the following year of 2016. We got I'm not gonna sing that song. But yeah, we got Deadpool. Oh my god, the road to getting this movie made is an interesting one. Ryan Reynolds has wanted to do a Deadpool movie for a while. After X-Men Origins, he actually pitched Tom Rothman a Deadpool movie, only for Tom Rothman just to be like, well, I don't really understand what you're doing with this, so I'm not going to greenlight it. And then they end up taking the piss out of Tom Rothman in that leaked footage. And yeah, they leaked the footage. Tom Rothman had left Fox way before then, so the footage got leaked, and within 24 hours, the movie was greenlit, and they started production on it almost straight away. The hype for this movie as well was insane. I think everyone and their mother was looking forward to this movie because, like, it's Deadpool. It was something new. It was something different. It was something unique. It was going to be this hardcore R-rated superhero comedy. And we've gone that in the past, with Kick-Ass and everything like that. But the fact that this was a Marvel property that we're getting this with was completely new and completely interesting. And yeah, this movie is really, really fun. It's fun. It's got great jokes. It's got great action. Ryan completely makes up for Origins like he would do. He's pretty much become synonymous with this role now. He was born to play Deadpool, I think. He generally was born to play Deadpool. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but he generally was born to play this character. And I love the love story between him and Vanessa is really sweet and really believable. I feel like they're one of the better superhero couples romances in superhero movies. Definitely one of the more believable ones, I think. And I didn't really like how she was portrayed though, as how I liked how she was portrayed as tough, But I didn't like at the ending when she was the damsel in distress for him to save, because it's a little bit like you betray her as tough, but then he's got to save her in the end. That doesn't really add up. Like I don't know. Wade wanting to fix his face to get him back looking normal so he can see Vanessa and be with her again, because he doesn't know how she's going to react to him the way he looks now. That was really heartfelt. That was really sweet. At the end of the day, this movie really is just about a man just wanting to be with a woman he loves, and I really like him. I really do admire that. That's essentially the plot of the Deadpool movie, where it's not just Deadpool running around making like booby jokes. It's literally, it's this very sweet, lovely story about, at the center of it, at the core of it, it's this very sweet, lovely story about, Wade wanting to be with the woman that he cares about, and that's really lovely and really nice. The R rating really does let them shine in this movie. The action's great. Tim Miller really did go all out for this movie. It is a shame he didn't do the sequel, but at the same time, I can understand. Him and Ryan clearly didn't see eye to eye. They weren't on the same page, everything like that. So I can understand why, he didn't. I can understand why, if that was the case, he didn't want to come back and everything like that. The villain, Francis, was a massive dickhead, and I love him. He was one of those. He was like one of those dickhead bullies in high school, who's like just a proper cunt, and you hate him. And that's pretty much what Francis is. Francis is just, he's just such a good villain as well. Like, he constantly just taunts Wade. He constantly bullies him for everything. It's really good. I love Colossus in this movie and how he's a little bit more like his comic book counterpart, how he's much bigger, more bulkier. He's Russian, everything like that. I love how this was the sentiment for Deadpool movies, where they're like, we're going to take everything the other X movies did wrong and we're going to make them right. Like, we're going to have our characters actually look and act how they're supposed to look and act. Which is really cool to see. I love all the in-jokes as well, like the fourth wall breaking adds a good sense to it as well. Again, it's something really new and different as well, and some good jokes in there, like when he's like, I'm taking you to the mansion, and he's like, to see the professor, and Wade's just like, which one, McAvoy or Stewart? Oh god, these timelines are so confusing. I love that. The opening action sequence as well is really great. I love the opening credits as well, where it's like, it still looks like a professional one, and then halfway through it just feels like Deadpool snuck into the editing bay and just did them all himself. I thought that was a really funny joke. Again, like, the fourth wall breaking is really, really good in this movie and really unique. It adds a new flavor to it. She-Hulk should have taken lessons from this movie. I'm just saying, this handled the fourth wall breaking and the comedy of the fourth wall breaking comedy really well, much better than She-Hulk did. I didn't hate She-Hulk by any means necessary. I thought it was just okay, but it could have taken a lot of good lessons from this movie, I think, in terms of having how to have your character break the fourth wall and have it actually, be funny. The suit as well, I really love. I love how the eyes are CGI. It really set a good precedent going forward, where people would like how the eyes move and help them be more expressive and convey more emotion without having to be too physical or over the top as well. Like in the early Spider-Man movies, how particularly Andrew Garfield has had to like be really over the top just to convey what emotion he's feeling in that suit. Obviously the eyes don't move in that suit, but now obviously Tom Holland's eyes do move, so he's able to convey emotion better and easier, and it just fits with Deadpool's character as well. Like it fits with his character to have this more this quippy, almost cartoony-ish look, but a more adult edge to it as well. The final battle is also really cool. Megasonic Teenage Warhead, I forgot to mention about her. She's a really cool character. She roasts Wade so much in this movie that it's genuinely hilarious. And she just has some really great moments as well, like when Colossus is getting choked by that character who's played by that Star Wars actress. She gets a really cool scene where she's like charging up and she knocks that character out clean out, and it's really cool to see. I like how they, jokes like that where he's like, oh, superhero landing, it's really hard on your knees. And then they just, and they play the music and stuff like that. And it's really cool. Dupenda is a really cool character as well. The actor that plays him is really good in this and really funny as well. Like when he captures his cousin and shoves him in the boot of his car. And Deadpool's just like, Bhupenda, this is the wrong thing to do. I'm so proud of you. It's like, oh my god, it's so hilarious. And it's just, I really love this movie, man. I really love the Deadpool movies in general. And I just cannot wait for the third one. Third one's coming up soon. Deadpool and Wolverine, cannot wait for it, I swear. But we've got many more movies left to do. So I'm going to wrap this up now. If you've not seen Deadpool yet, what the fuck are you doing? Get your ass on Disney Plus and watch Deadpool. If you've not watched Deadpool in a while, rewatch it. It's worth it. every single minute. It's worth it. It's funny. It's hilarious. Ryan Reynolds was born to play this character. Just go watch Deadpool. Just go watch Deadpool. If you want any out of all these movies, just go watch Deadpool, and then go watch Deadpool 2, and then go watch Deadpool and Wolverine when that comes out in July. Just do it. Just do it. Literally, just do it. And yeah, so after that, we got X-Men Apocalypse. This movie's really boring. Unfortunately, it's a very boring movie. Like, it's not bad like X-Men Origins. It's very well put together and everything. It's it's actually properly decently put together. But it's just a really bad movie, man. It's dull, it's not very interesting, and once again, this was done just to set up the Pheonix saga, but at least with X-Men 2, they had a good story to go with that, to help set that up. In this one literally just feels like Bryan Singer was like, okay, I didn't get to do Pheonix saga the first time around, so I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to set it up, and then I'm going to do it in the next, and then I'm going to do it in the next one. And that turned out to be thrown back in his face because he didn't end up not doing Dark Phoenix in the end. That was Simon Kinberg as well. But this movie's just really dumb, just really dull and not interesting, really. It's just really boring. And it feels like it just feels the same now. Like, it feels like, okay, we've seen this all before. Can we maybe have something a bit, new now? Like, it's starting to feel a bit old, a bit worn down. Now the formula is starting to become really apparent and really noticeable. Magneto and Raven, for example, neither of these two characters needed to be here. I'm just going to say that up front now. Magneto and Raven did not need to be in this movie. 100%, they just didn't need to be in this movie. I mean, like, there's the script, it like looks for things for them to do, but it's like their stories ended pretty well in Days of Future Past. Like, particularly Raven's story ended pretty well in Days of Future Past. She was walked off, she was free to be whatever she wanted, whoever she wanted, to just live a life and everything like that. And then they do this thing where they're like, oh no, you're a role model, everyone looks up to you, and it's like, I mean, it just doesn't work, and it doesn't really work. And I think Jennifer Lawrence's performance doesn't really help that. I mean, you could easily tell that she clearly just did not care about this character anymore. Not that, which is obviously no, like, this, which isn't a dig at her either. Like, obviously that's when an actor feels like they're done with a part, they should be able to leave that part and go off and do other things and feel refreshed and come back to the part feeling refreshed and everything like that. But again, with Magneto, he definitely did not need to be in this movie, and it just feels like they tried really hard to put him in this movie for some reason, and it's like, oh shit, we need Magneto in this movie. How about he had a family, and then his family died, and he got angry, and then he joined Apocalypse's Four Horsemen, and that it just feels so forced to have him here. It's like, and so generic as well. Like, his family died. Yeah, it's like, wow, okay, wow. Especially when you consider the fact that we didn't really spend a lot of time with his family. We don't really get to know him as characters. We don't really get to know his daughter that well either. So when they do die, and he has his mental breakdown, there's not really, I don't know, man. It's just not great. I just did not, and again, he didn't need to be in this movie as well, because we've seen this. We've seen Magneto we've seen the Magneto story before multiple times already. Give us maybe a new villain for them to face off. We don't have to have Magneto in every single X-Men movie ever. Like, there's plenty of other villains we could have the X-Men face off. We don't need him and everything. Like, does he have to be in every film? Like, again, there's no decent reason for him to be here. There's plenty of other there's plenty of other villains that the X-Men characters can face aside from Magneto. There's no, do you know what I mean? Like, this just, I don't know. I really don't know. The Quicksilver scene in this doesn't really match up to Days of Future Past. The Days of Future Past one was really great. But this one is kind of a little bit overkill, and it's like, okay, cool, we've kind of already done this already. Can we maybe do something else? Like, you know what I mean? And the same thing with Quicksilver. Why was he in this movie, man? Apart from, he was the standout, but he doesn't really have, any real motivation to be in this movie. They try and give him an arc where he's like, Magneto's my father, and I need to tell him, but he never tells him. That arc just goes completely undone. Not resolved at all. Not particularly sure why he was like that. Why he was like that. Apocalypse is a terrible villain. I'm sorry, but he is just awful in this. He makes no impact. He's dull. He's boring, and he looks terrible. He looks like a Power Rangers villain. Like, I'm a practical effects guy, right? Like, I've said this beforehand. I prefer practical effects over CGI any day. But there are times when I do feel like CG is needed for a practical effect. Apocalypse was one of them. I feel like CGing him, he probably would have looked a lot better. Like, because he looks like a Power Rangers villain in this, and it's just so alarming, and he just kind of stands out. Like, he doesn't look, and he's not very threatening either. Like, Oscar Isaac is doing the best he can with the material that he has, but the material that he has is not very good. And he kind of spends the movie just going on going, my child, I will help you with this, and I speak in this voice, and it's like, it's just wow, just wow. Didn't know how I felt about I don't know how I felt about seeing Angel as a villain. I'm guessing in the comic books he was always a villain, maybe, and they just changed that for Last Stand. But it's really daunting seeing him as a villain when in Last Stand he was a good guy. Okay. Nightcrawler, it was cool seeing him again, but I mean, he gets something to do, which is nice. Scott and Jean are cool, but their relationship is never really takes off. Like, it's never really focused on. They get a few scenes where they flirt here and there, but there's never really anything that, you know, hints to them getting together, which doesn't really make a lot of sense for the next movie for Dark Phoenix, because like they're supposed to be together, but it doesn't really feel like that. Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? There's nothing that really sets it up. The fact that this is supposed to be set 10 years after Days of Future Past, and none of the older actors seem like they've aged. I mean, at least with Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, with Mystique, it was established in First Class that because of her transformation powers, she was able to alter her appearance. I can't remember exactly what the line was. There was a line in there that said that aging wouldn't really affect her much. She would still look quite young. So having her not age well, having her not age much makes sense. But, you know, this is set like 10 years after Days of Future Past, and James McAvoy, Mora, Magneto, Hank, they literally all look the exact same. Even the people from First Class, the guy from the First Class team that comes back, I can't remember his name. Havoc, that's it, Havoc. With Havoc, he looks the exact same they did in First Class. He doesn't look like he's aged, and usually that's not really a problem. But this is supposed to be set 10 years. No, in fact, this is supposed to be set like 20 years after First Class, and he looks like he's barely aged a day. Like, what moisturizer is he using? What's going on here? You really couldn't be bothered to make them look older. Like, maybe give them some wrinkles under their eyes. Maybe have them, like, I don't know, like something. The idea that Xavier became bald because it was something due to Apocalypse doing the spell that Apocalypse put, and he was trying to get him out of his head and stuff like that. Did we really need an explanation as to why he went bald? Like, couldn't we just say, like, you know, he went bald? Like, it happens. I'm assuming mutants go bald during when they age and stuff. I don't know. The PG-13 F-bomb is starting to lose impact now. It was great in First Class. It was great in First Class, The Wolverine, and Days of Future Past, because they were timed really well. They were really funny. Like, when he says "go fuck yourself" in First Class, it's like, oh wow, he did swear. And then in The Wolverine, he goes, "go fuck yourself, pretty boy." He's like, oh, he swear again. Oh wow. And then, you know, when James McAvoy tells him to fuck off in Days of Future Past, they're like, oh my god, wow. Like, you know, there was impact. But then obviously the film after this was Deadpool, and there was a lot of F-bombs in that because that was R-rated. So when Magneto, you know, so if you're watching them in order, but even if you remove Deadpool from the equation, by the time we get to Apocalypse, you know, when Magneto goes, "Who the fuck are you?" It's just like, oh, okay, he said fuck again. That it loses its impact. It's really starting to lose impact now, and it's just a bit lame. It's just lame. It's just really fucking lame. What else as well? Wolverine's cameo in this was pointless. Like, what was the point of Wolverine being here apart from Hugh Jackman's signed a contract for a couple of appearances? We have to abide by it. It's just, I don't know. it was just a very pointless cameo. It was like, it was just, it was just a very pointless cameo. It was like, why was he here? And why are we seeing him going through this again? Like, this is the third time on screen we've seen him go through the Weapon X program. We saw it briefly in X-Men 2, then we saw it again in Origins. And then we saw like flashbacks to that in Days of Future Past, didn't we? So this is technically the fourth time we've seen it, and it's like, what? Like, why are we seeing this again? Why are we seeing? I don't know. And it just looked weird because we see like Hugh Jackman's a lot older than the younger cast, and you see this like really older looking Hugh Jackman like working, like, you know, interacting with them, which, well, he doesn't actually interact with them. I don't know why he's here, to be honest with you. I have no clue, really. And overall, honestly, it was just a letdown. It really was a letdown. After the big high that was Days of Future Past, this movie just let you down so much, and it's dull, it's boring, it's not very memorable. It's like, you know, like I was just groaning the entire time I was watching this, to be honest. I was just like, oh, this is really boring. When does this fucking end? Yeah, so X-Men Apocalypse, not great, and it kicked things off for the second slippery slope that this franchise decided to go down, which really sucks. But what doesn't suck is the next movie we're talking about, which is, of course, 2017's Logan. Now, when I first saw this movie back in 2017, I put up a Facebook status saying, and I quote, "Logan is the greatest superhero movie ever made." Now, to be fair, I was 22 at the time, you know, and I just watched the movie and I just loved it. I didn't have time to, you know, think back and, you know, go over that stuff as well. So obviously for this retrospective, I did rewatch it because I've not rewatched Logan since 2017, shockingly enough. I don't know why. Like, I just never got around to rewatching it, I guess, until now. And yeah, so I sat down for this retrospective, I rewatched it, and I can very confidently say that I still stand by that claim. This is the greatest superhero movie ever made. I'm not being over dramatic. This is not clickbait. I genuinely believe that Logan is the greatest superhero movie ever made. I think it's better than Richard Donner's Superman movies. I think it's better than Batman 89. I think it's better than Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. I think it's better than Blade 1 and 2. I think it's better than any of the previous X-Men movies, the good previous X-Men movies. I think it's better than any of the Avengers movies. This is better than any MCU movie ever made. This is the greatest superhero movie ever fucking made. And it all comes down to the fact that it's just, oh my god, this is such a perfect movie. This is just a perfect film. And mainly because it actually commits to its premise. You know, with a lot of superhero movies nowadays, because obviously this movie's a Western, right? Like that's literally the gist of it. It's a Western. And normally with superhero movies, particularly with MCU, they'll delve into other genres, but they'll still keep that, you know, superhero-isms in there. Like, they'll be like, this is still a superhero movie, but it's like, what if a superhero movie did this other genre, like a political thriller or something like that, but it still feels like a superhero movie. You still feel like you're watching it. Logan essentially just commits fully to it. It's like, no, we're a Western, and we're committing to the Western aspects of this movie. It has the superhero aspects about it, but it never distracts from it. And what's great about it is that, yeah, there's action in this movie, sure, but there's not a lot of action in this movie. I think there's, you know, like a grand total of like maybe 2 or 3 big action sequences, maybe 4 at a push, but throughout most of it, it's just character. It just focuses on the characters. It tells this really in-depth and deep story about a man who, you know, essentially finds out he has a daughter, and is trying to get her as well as get Charles to safety. And the way the characters are portrayed here is just, it really does break your heart. Like at the beginning, like at the opening when and it's really affectionate. Like in the opening when that Charles has dementia, when we see that for the first time in this movie, when, you know, Logan goes to give him his meds, and he's just rolling around like saying Taco Bell advertisements and stuff like that, and it's so horrible to see. It's really horrible to see. It's so horrible to see as well, because it's like, because, you know, this is a character we've grown up watching for ages, and then seeing him in this manner, seeing him, you know, degrade himself, it's just really heartbreaking. But it affects you. It really does affect you in the best way possible. That makes sense. Like, you know, it works in the sense of the movie, like, because the movie's telling this really much more deeper character driven, more character focused story than ever before. Like this really is a more character focused story. You know, like most superhero movies, yeah, they've got characters in them, they focus on the characters and stuff like that, sure. But they're blockbusters. By the end of the day, those movies are blockbusters. They've got one thing going. They've essentially a blockbuster has one job to do, and that's to purely entertain the audience. You know, you're not necessarily going on a journey with. But you go on journeys, sure, but you're not going on like an in-deep kind of character study about the main character that you're watching. And the fact that Logan actually commits to, this movie is called Logan. You know, it's not called Wolverine. It's not called X-Men. This is called Logan, and this is about the character Logan. It's not about Wolverine. It's not about the X-Men. This is about Logan, and it essentially tells a story about the character. And then when you find out that Charles, you know, potentially killed the X-Men, when you find out that he essentially is the reason why there's no more X-Men, because he killed them after having a massive seizure as well. It really leaves a massive hole in your heart, and this massive pit, and really big massive emotional pit, because you know at the ending of, you know, this follows up from this is supposed to follow up from Days of Future Past. That ending was more happy, that ending was more brightly lit, and it seemed like there was a bright future ahead of the X-Men, and only to find out that, you know, Charles, the man who created the X-Men, who loved them all, killed them. he killed the X-Men essentially. And then Wolverine has to, like, him and Wolverine they've only got each other. They have Caliban as well, but it's mainly him and Charles together, and they have to, you know, look after each other. And you just see the rocky relationship where, particularly in that scene where, like, Logan at the beginning when Logan gives him the drugs and he leaves, and then he just goes, "You're waiting for me to die." It's like, oh my god, it's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. And then you see, the relationship between him and Laura as well. Like, when I love how, as soon as he finds out that, like, she's his dad, and even though he wants nothing to do with her or anything like that, he still immediately just jumps straight into dad mode. Like, he immediately goes from like from the very first, like, she's wearing the little horse ride thing, and she's trying to get it to go again, so he gives her a coin and he goes, "Last ride." And so he immediately, from that moment on, he immediately jumps into dad mode, even though he wants nothing to do with Laura, but not because he doesn't want any, not because he hates her, not because he resents her or anything like that, but because, as he says, everyone he cares about, you know, dies. Everyone he cares about dies, and he doesn't want that for her. And he essentially, in a weird way, believes that he's cursed. He believes that he's cursed. And he doesn't want her to suffer the same fate he did. But he still cares about her massively, and you do see that relationship grow and develop and change over time as well. And with Logan in this movie, you really see him just on his knees, and he really, because he's at the end of his life in this movie. He's literally dying. The antimantium is poisoning him. He's not healing anymore. He's got wounds that are not, like, going away or not healing or anything like that. He's literally on his deathbed as well. And then you just see it, and he just look like he wanted to die in the Wolverine, but then after everything that went through in that movie, he got a kind of a re-energized way of life, and he wanted to carry on living. And then in this movie, he's lost everything. He's lost all his friends, everything. So even when he finds out he's got Laura, he still wants to die. Like, he's just there, like, he's ready to do it. As well. And the way they've made Hugh Jackman look in this movie, the fact they've had to make him look much more older. There's a scene where Laura is trying to get him to take her to North Dakota, and he's just, "I'm not taking you to North Dakota. I'm fucked up, and it's a 2-day drive. I cannot get you there." And you just see the look on his face where he's given up completely, and he's just hurt, and he's just lost Charles again. Which is Charles's death in this movie is still impactful, don't get me wrong, particularly when his final line is him talking about the boat that they were gonna buy together. Oh my god, this movie's so sad. They were gonna buy a boat, and they were gonna fly off into this, sail off into the sea, and it was gonna be magical and everything. And yeah, they didn't do that. It was this is so fucking sad. And everything like that. Despite the fact that he's died before in Last Stand, that still doesn't undermine this one. He still is still affectionate, and the fact that he believed at first it was Logan who killed him, only to, like he's still like, and he'll and the fact that he thinks it was Logan at first that killed him, and turned out to be a clone, essentially a grown clone of Logan, which was really frightening to see. To be honest, the X-25, I believe it's called, is really threatening and scary and everything like that. And the villains in this movie are proper horrible. Like, you really hate them as well. I feel what's his name? Is it Bobby Holbrook as Piers? Like, this guy, that guy Piers is just a massive cunt. Just a massive cunt. And so when the kids are essentially killing him with their powers and stuff, you feel no mercy for him, because he's spent this entire time torturing people, hurting people, torturing these kids, growing these mutants out from test tubes and everything like that. Trying to kill Logan, torturing Caliban, so you don't really feel anything for him, unfortunately. And the fact that he was like, oh yeah, I used to be a big fan of yours, by the way, as well, because obviously X-Men comics do exist in this universe, as well. Like, people actually took the X-Men stories and made them into comic books, which I thought was a really cool, nice little reference and nod to the source material. I thought that was quite interesting. I like that scene as well, where Logan is telling her, they made all this up and they told one big fucking lie, and it's like, oh my god, that's really quite a heartbreaking scene, to be honest. And Richie Grant is a very slimy and selfish and cunning villain. I really like him. Richie Grant is always good at playing villains, though, so that's not really a big surprise. I like how he was the main reason for why there's no new mutants, because they accidentally put because it was all due to like genetically engineered crops created by what's it? How do you pronounce this? Transigen, the company that he works for. Obviously through the world's food supply, and then obviously he finds out that that wasn't ever the intention, and then they decided to start just growing mutants of their own and torturing these mutants of their own. And it's just, he's a very horrible character. And so when Logan shoots him in the head, you feel nothing, not like, oh, I don't feel anything for him, like as in you don't feel any pity for him, no remorse for him or anything like that. No, you just like, good, like, shoot that guy, because that guy was a horrible person. Like a really bad individual. I really love the scenes as well where Logan was at the family's house and they're staying there, and I do quite like how Charles in this movie is still teaching Logan some of these really important life lessons as well. Like, even now, even when they're both on their deathbeds, he's still trying to teach Logan, oh, somebody has come along, you should help him. Or when he's like, Logan, this is what life is like, you need to take him here and embrace it and enjoy it, as well. Like, he's still trying to teach Logan all of these really important messages, these really important life lessons, even in his last few hours. And what's really sad is that the final life lesson that he was trying to, the final words Charles ever really said, when he was talking about how this was the greatest, most perfect night of his life and he didn't deserve it and all that stuff, Logan wasn't there to hear it. It was the X-24 that was there to hear it. And it was, this is a very heartbreaking, sad, and powerful movie as well. And this is, I know I'll talk about that in a second. Let's go on to the movie's ending. Let's go into Caliban. Caliban's really good. I love how for his first few minutes on screen is essentially just Stephen Merchant literally just doing a fucking like stand up for a few seconds, which is really funny. I thought it was really good as Caliban. Granted, it doesn't make much sense because Caliban was in X-Men Apocalypse, and how can he be in that movie and still be in this movie unless not going out in the sun makes you live longer? But I don't really know how that works because this movie's set in 2029. I don't think about it. They don't really care about continuity in these movies anyway. So he was really good as that character. But before I go on to that, let's talk about Laura, Wolverine's daughter, who's played by Daphne Keane. But the fact this was her first big, huge movie role is quite unique and quite interesting to see. And she does a good job playing Laura, aka X-23. She's able to convey that emotion. And her screams, she was able to emulate Logan's similar behavioral patterns as well. But even which is why Patrick Stewart's Press X says she's just like you, very much like you, and so she's able to share that kind of sweet, bond between her and Logan. Her and Hugh Jackman really work well with each other. You really do, in a weird way, you kind of do buy the father-daughter thing, even though like they're both trying really hard not to acknowledge that they're both related to each other. In a way, like she knows he is her dad and everything like that, but she's not really trying to acknowledge it until at least the ending of the movie. But Daphne Keane, she does a really good job at playing this role, and she gets a lot of good things to do. She chops people's heads off, she like fucking stabs people with her claws and everything like that. And damn, man, damn, damn. Yeah. So, but let's talk about the ending. So yeah, Wolverine, he gets slammed into a tree trunk. X-25 gets shot in the head with an adamantium bullet, and then him and Laura have one more conversation, and then she finally, because throughout this whole movie he finally acknowledges that she's his daughter. He finally acknowledges that she's his daughter. She finally acknowledges that he's her father. Like she calls him daddy for the very first time and the very last time, and she says to her, Laura, my Laura, don't be what they made you. And then his final line, this is what it feels like. He's ready to die, and he just, oh my god, and just seeing Laura's reaction to it, it's just so heartfelt. It's so beautifully done. And then they bury him. She grabs the cross, turns it into an X, puts on his grave. Oh man, it's just that ending. It really hits you hard. It really hits you hard. Just seeing Laura's reaction, the fact that she starts crying, and the fact that she calls him daddy, and he's literally just a few seconds before he dies. It's like they finally acknowledge that they're father and daughter, and oh my god, it's such a powerful scene. It's such a powerful movie. I love it. And I said Logan is the greatest superhero movie ever made. I do not care what anyone says. This is the best superhero movie ever made. And if the MCU really are doing more R-rated stuff after Deadpool 3, because apparently Blade's going to be R-rated and they're doing Marvel Zombies, this is the R-rated. This is the kind of movies I want them to do. I want them to do these more character-driven, character-focused R-rated stories, like character stories that are R-rated, that don't have to completely rely on the superhero tropes, that are able to completely commit to the genres they're emulating fully. I want that from the MCU. If the MCU do more R-rated stuff, I want them to do more movies like Logan. Obviously, yeah, sure, if you want to do like silly, goofy superhero stuff, you can save those for the Deadpool 3s and stuff like that. But I want more of these movies with other characters. Like I want these more character-driven stories. If we are going to get more R-rated content from the MCU, which I really hope we do. I mean, hopefully Blades can be a bit more character-driven if that's going to be R-rated. Because obviously with these MCU movies, they tend to focus on, they figure out the action sequences first, and then the character and stories come second. And I really want them, if they're doing more R-rated stuff, I want them to reverse that, and character first, action sequence second. I really would love that to be the case. But yeah, man, Logan is I've gushed about this movie for too long. It's time to go. It's time to move on. Logan, great super movie made. Give it a watch. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And what's also fantastic is Deadpool 2. Well, I mean, this got a bit of a mixed reaction when it came out, actually. But I still really like it. I still really enjoy it. This feels a lot more like a Deadpool comic book coming to life. If anything, I think getting one of the producers of John Wick to direct this movie was a smart move, because this helps to add a bit more of a flashy kind of sense to it, particularly with the action sequences as well. I love the John Wick movies to death. I think those movies are terrific in their in their storytelling, but particularly in their action sequences. David Leitch, I think that's supposed to be it. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to say David Lynch, because that's a completely different guy. But but you know what I mean. Like David Leitch, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it. He did a really good job with this movie, though. He was really great with it. The action sequences are cool. The jokes, I think, are really funny. What I like about this movie, though, is that, because obviously a lot of comedies sequels to comedies, they tend to repeat jokes a lot of the time. But what this movie tends to do is that this movie actually, it doesn't repeat jokes, but it more continues them, and that makes sense. So how in the first movie he says to Blind Al, I've hidden the cure for blindness, and a ton of cocaine in his flat. And then he sneaks back in at the beginning of the movie, and you literally see the cure for blindness and the ton of cocaine. It's like, or how when he jumps out of the building and lands on his knees, he's trying to do the superhero landings. Obviously, in the first movie, he said that was really hard. He was like, that's really hard on your knees. And he tries to do it in the second movie, and he fails at it completely. He's like, oh, God, I need to learn that superhero landing. It's like, it helps continue. It doesn't really repeat jokes from the first one, but more continues them in a way, which I quite like. That's quite a unique thing to do, to be honest. Which I quite like. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that. I quite liked Russell and Wade's relationship. I thought it was really sweet. You could tell that he actually does care for Russell, even when they're locked up in the prison. And Russell's just like, we should be a team. We should be a fucking team, mate. It's like, and Wade's just like, please just fuck off and leave me alone. I'm just let me die of cancer. It's like, oh my God, this got dark. But yeah, the action was really sweet. So when they do fall out, and when he says to Cable, "Oh, the kid, I don't give a fuck about him," and you just see the look on Russell's face. You really do buy that, emotion and the heart. And Wade's trying really hard to like make it up to him as the movie progresses and goes along. And that's kind of the theme of the movie, where he's trying hard to get back to Vanessa in a way. Speaking of Vanessa, I hate how she became a victim of fridging in this movie. For those who don't know, fridging is basically a term that originated from a Green Lantern comic book, where one of the Green Lanterns, I can't remember which one, I think it may have been Hal Jordan or some other one of them, where he came back to find his girlfriend killed and her body stuffed in the fridge, and that was basically his motivation to beat up the bad guy of that comic book issue. So it's essentially when a female character is killed off to try and motivate the male character. I hated that. I thought Vanessa was really great. I didn't understand why they didn't just have her become copycat in this. Hopefully she becomes that in the third movie. I'm glad they brought her back at the end, and that her death didn't stay permanent for long. And I thought that ending montage was really funny, actually. Colossus is great as usual. Him and Wade have very good chemistry with each other. I love the scenes in the X-Mansion where he's just like, what am I supposed to do around here? It's just you two. What the part of the wings? What's it do anyway? He just fucking flies through off the ground. And you just see the other X-Men just slowly close the doors because like, we want nothing to do with you, Wade. Fuck off. And I love the fact where he's trying really hard to like, I'm an X-Man. And they're like, trainee. And he's like, yeah, and it's just like, I feel jokes like that do make me laugh as well. I do like when Russell, when they first meet Russell and he's just screaming everyone to fuck off, like that's really, that's pretty funny. Domino is also really a good character as well, but the whole Domino's a really good character as well, like her superpower of luck being the thing is really nice, or cool, interesting. I like how they play with that in the movie. But the whole how is luck a superpower joke, it just, well, I don't know why I went Somerset there for a second. But yeah, the whole, how is luck a superpower joke thing, that gets really old after a while. It's just a bit like, yeah, but we get it. You don't buy into luck being a superpower. We get it. Can you move on? Just move on, please. But yeah, him trying to be an X-Men is really funny as well. I love the X-Force team. Peter's a really funny character. I love how he's just a regular guy, and he's like, I just saw the advertisement, I thought this would be fun, I just want to join. As well, Dupenda trying to become a contractor. I think that's really funny as well. Granted, Dupenda's not in this movie very much, but to be honest, he was in the first movie very much anyway. So I do like the joke that when he goes to run to battle but realizes how dangerous it is, and he's like, nah, fuck that. I'm going back to my cab, mate. It was great seeing Juggernaut again, looking how he should look. Oh, that's another thing as well I forgot to mention. Juggernaut was shockingly bad in Last Stand. I mean, my God, when he was like, "Oh, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch," I was like, "Oh my, no, no, that, oh my God, let's not go there." He luckily does not say that at all in this. Luckily, there's no "I'm Juggernaut, bitches" in this movie. Thank fuck. Because this movie has jokes that are actually funny in this. Josh Brolin as Cable, I think, is a really good character. I like how he's more complex. I like how he's more serious and more kind of like not deadpan, but more serious. Serious. It does contrast well with Wade's more goofy, silly nature. as well. I like his backstory, how he's after Russell because Russell turned evil, and Wade's main goal is to try and make sure that Russell doesn't become evil. He's trying to essentially save Russell from doing that first kill and getting a taste for it and everything like that. Similar to how, with Raven in Days of Future Past, how they had to try and save her before the day she truly became Mystique, as well. Which it's kind of a little bit of a repeat there, but it's fine. I kind of do prefer Josh Brolin as Cable compared to Thanos. Not because, don't get me wrong, Thanos, he's great as Thanos. Thanos is a great villain, but something about his performance as Cable, I kind of do prefer slightly more than his performance as Thanos. I can't really put on what it is, but there's something about the performance that makes me like it way more than his performance in Thanos. Maybe it's just because with Thanos, because Thanos is obviously, he's all motion capture, he's all CG, and obviously with Thanos, he was another like Apocalypse. Thanos is one of those characters where you need CG to bring him to life. You can't do him in a practical effect. But I guess maybe the motion cap, because Josh Brolin's not really a motion capture expert and stuff like that. He's not like an Andy Serkis who you put him in a motion capture suit, and Andy Serkis can act like that. Josh Brolin was quite new to the whole motion capture stick when he did Thanos, and so you can tell he's still trying to learn that stuff around. Not that his performance as Thanos is bad by any means necessary. Thanos is still a good villain. Do not get me wrong with that one. He's a very complex villain. He's a very good villain. Probably the best MCU villain ever, easily, but that's not really saying much because most MCU villains are fucking terrible anyways. But yeah, I think because Josh Brolin's Cable is literally there and it's all like a practical effect as well, the gizmos on his face and everything like that is a practical effect as well. Maybe that's the one reason why, because I'm actually seeing an actual person perform rather than somebody in emotion who's essentially a CG character perform, if that makes sense. Maybe that's why I prefer it a little bit better. And I do like the rivalry him and Wade had. I thought that was really funny. Him and Ryan Reynolds really bounced off each other really well. But the drama with between him and Wade as well, I thought worked really well. Him and Ryan bounced off each other really well. I think in the movie. And yeah, and I do kind of like the ending a little bit when he goes back in time and he does Vanessa's death. But I also quite like it because it has the the Green Lantern joke and the Origins Wolverine joke where he kills Barakapool and Friday kills Ryan Reynolds so he doesn't do Green Lantern, which I thought was hilarious. So yeah, mate, Deadpool 2. I couldn't get wrong. If you don't like it, that's fair enough. But I do love it. I think it feels a bit like a Deadpool comic book coming to life. I like the jokes. I like how it continues jokes from the first one. I like how it does have this new flair to the first one as well. And the characters are great. Characters are fun. Cameos are really good as well. I don't know why they had to kill off Terry Crews though. Did you have to kill off Terry Crews? Come on, man. He's a legend. But yeah, it was still a really good movie. And if you're not watching it well, if you weren't too keen on it when it first came out, give it another chance. You might find yourself liking it a little bit better, a little bit more than you did the first time round. But yeah, Deadpool 2, good movie all around. What's not a good movie though is the next one we have to talk about, and that is X-Men Dark Phoenix. This movie is fucking terrible. It is awful. It's not as bad as X-Men Origins Wolverine, but believe me when I tell you, it comes close. It comes so fucking close to being as bad as X-Men Origins Wolverine. I think the main thing why I hate this movie so much, and this was supposed to be the end. This was supposed to be how the X-Men franchise was supposed to go out, because obviously, originally it wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to start a new trilogy, but then, Disney brought Fox, and then they were like, oh, we got to bookend this franchise now. And this was the best you could do to end the X-Men. This was the best you could do to end a 20-year legacy in film that, I'm not shocked Ryan Reynolds is bringing back all the Fox characters, because they need a better ending than this. Like this ending is just, oh my God, it's horrendous. It's fucking horrendous. How do you fuck up the Pheonix saga for a second time? I do not understand. I know that originally this film was supposed to be 2 parts, and I don't know why they didn't stick with that. It should have been 2 parts, man. The Dark Phoenix saga is a big, even if you haven't read in the X-Men comic books, if you know your Marvel history, at least you know how big and grand and important to the X-Men saga, the Dark Phoenix storyline, the Phoenix saga is. It's really important to the X-Men franchise and the IP in general. And then the fact that 20th Century Fox fucked this up twice, not once but twice. How do you do that? And why didn't you split into 2 parts like you were going to? What did the Disney Fox merger really prevent that from happening? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it did. I'm not 100% sure why they ended up not going with it in the end, but maybe they feel like, oh, this will cost too much money, but I don't know. And it feels... The prime problem with this movie is that it just feels directionless. This movie feels like it even though there was a director there, Simon Kinberg, this was his first directing credit. Remember, Simon Kinberg, he's produced a lot of stuff, he's written a lot of scripts. This was his first directing credit, and you can tell. You can so tell. This feels like a first-time director doing his first movie. And it just feels directionless. It feels like it doesn't really know what it's supposed to do, what's it supposed to say. What? Like, what's like? I'm so confused when I'm watching this movie. It's like, what was this movie supposed to do? What was it supposed to say? Anything? What am I supposed to feel? Like, scenes just happen, and they're just kind of stitched together, and things just kind of happen for no rhyme or reason, and stuff like that. And seriously though, why is Magneto in this movie? Like, why is he in this movie? He didn't have to. He barely figured out how to put him in Apocalypse well. In this movie, like, you could make an argument for Apocalypse. They probably just about managed to justify why Magneto's there, and that's fine. But why in this movie? There's no reason. There's no reason why he's in this movie. Like, he shows up halfway through, and then it just feels like we need Magneto in this movie. Let's just shove him in. And like, there's no rhyme or reason. Oh yeah, she attacked Raven. She attacked Raven and stuff. She killed Raven. Okay, and why is Raven in this movie as well? Like, that doesn't make any sense. The Raven makeup, the Mystique makeup looks terrible in this. I get Jennifer Lawrence didn't want to do it because she was getting sick and tired, and you could just tell Jennifer Lawrence just did not want to be in this franchise anymore. And I don't blame her either. I mean, I feel like she should have left after Days of Future Past. I mean. I don't know why they kept drawing her back into this franchise. She doesn't have anything to do. The storyline in this is really shit as well. She doesn't really get a lot to do in this movie, much like Last Stand in a weird way. She didn't have a lot to do in Last Stand either. In this one, her main motivation is to just die. To get Hank to go evil and have bring Eric into the plot, and it's like, man, did you have to be in this? And much like speaking of Last Stand, they don't even like the whole, did Charles do the right thing or not by suppressing Dean's memories of her family and everything like that. Was that the right thing for him to do? They don't even go into that. They just immediately go, no, it's the wrong thing for you to do, mate. They don't even there's no debate, there's no interesting conversation. There's just, no, Charles is wrong. And they treat Charles like a bad guy in this. Like, I hated the ending, how they just kind of forced him out of the X-Mansion. And, after everything he did for mutant rights, after everything he's done for this franchise, and after we've grown up idolizing this character, this is how it ends, how his story ends. It ends with him getting chucked away and being forced to retire, and then he goes off and he joins Eric, and then Eric's like, oh, one time, a long time ago, you offered me a home, and I was like, yeah, mate, you turned it down. What are you doing? So he can just go and fuck off, live with Eric, and it just doesn't make any sense, because at the ending of Days of Future Past, this was supposed to coincide with the ending of Days of Future Past, but this doesn't make any sense. What? Like, Days of Future Past, he was the headmaster again, and Jean was alive, but now Jean's dead again. What's going on here? I don't understand. I really do not understand this. This logic here with this movie, it's just so confusing. The aliens that are definitely not Skrulls. They're definitely not Skrulls. They're like Skrulls, but they're definitely not the Skrulls. They suck because they fucking suck. They're just these bland, boring aliens, and it's like, there's something interesting about them. You don't delve into the history, and like, there's no interesting lore with these aliens. They're just generic aliens. That's it. That's all it is with this movie. Just generic fucking aliens. And then they manipulate Jean and everything like that. And it's just like, fuck me. We've seen this all before. You can tell this movie's so predictable. They don't even focus. Scott's supposed to be the leader of the X-Men, but they don't even focus on that. As well, they name the school after Jean for some reason at the end, despite the fact that Jean killed Raven and killed a ton of other people. What? Why are we naming... What? What? It would be. I mean, it would have made more sense if you named it after Raven, like in memory of her. But no, we're gonna name it after Jean because reasons. Okay. It's just such bad potential as well. And like, why does Hank take over? And speaking of which, I fucking hated Hank in this movie. I really genuinely did not like him in this movie. I mean, yeah, I get that he's having an emotional break. I get that he's having a bit of a breakdown because Raven's died and everything like that. But having him like team up with Magneto to literally kill Jean, a woman, somebody that somebody that was a student of his that he taught, and then like he becomes a headmaster after Charles. But there's nothing in the movie that implies he wants to be the headmaster. There's not even a piece of throwaway dialogue where it's like, you know what, Hank? After I keep penning my mic and pop filter. You know what, Hank? When I retire, you can become headmaster. There's not even like a generic piece of throwaway dialogue that establishes that. He just becomes headmaster. It's like, why? He was aiming to kill Jean. Then he was firing off Storm, Scott, people who he taught, people who used to be his students that he would teach. He tried to kill them, and it's like, oh yeah, he's the perfect. I keep hearing that he's the perfect guy to take over. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, what the fuck? It's like, why does he take over? Like, he tried to kill Scott and Jean, and then this movie doesn't even focus on Scott being the leader. Like, even once. They wear the uniforms twice. No, not even. They don't even wear the uniforms twice. No, twice in this movie because of the space thing. Quicksilver, why is he here? He literally disappears halfway through because he gets injured. Like, that's literally just it. The train. I completely disagree with Full Fat Video. I think the train sequence is just as bad of an action sequence as the rest of the action sequences in this movie because they're really bad. That one where she goes to Magneto's land and he's trying to get the chopper to take off with his mind because she's controlling it and he's fighting back against her, and then when he pushes it off into the air, it looks terrible. It looks like something out of a Saturday morning cartoon. It's like doing. It's like, what the fuck? And it's just a bad ending. It's a bad ending. It's a bad ending. It's such a messy way to end. This is how you were going to end the X-Men? Really? This was the original ending. This is how you're going to end almost 20 years of film history, of comic book film history. This is how you're going to end the X-Men. This was how they're going to end it. And it's just, oh my god. This movie sucks. It sucks. It sucks so much. It's not as bad as X-Men Origins. X-Men Origins is a mess. This one is slightly better put together, but it's directionless. It really sucks. Disney should have just... I'm not a big fan of studios writing films off as tax write-offs. I don't really support that. But if Disney were ever considering doing that at the time of releasing it, I mean, I wouldn't blame them because this movie didn't make any money. It was pulled from theaters early because it was that bad. It was pulled from theaters like early into its run. Like, I think it was like what 2 or 4 weeks into its run or something like that. They just pulled it. They're like, this movie's not getting any money. Pull it. They should. You're better off just cancelling it as a tax write-off or just shoving the fucker on Disney Plus or something like that. Like, oh, fucking sake. For fuck's sake. This was how they were going to end the X-Men. This was how it was going to end. It was with this and it was shit. It was really shit. Oh my god. I'm so glad Deadpool 3 is going to fix all of this. I can't wait for Deadpool 3 to give this franchise the ending it deserves. I really can't. And then the last movie we're going to talk about is New Mutants. Dull, boring, bland, forgettable. It's not scary. It tries to be, but it's not. The characters are just not even interesting. This doesn't even feel like a movie. This feels like a backdoor pilot to a TV series. Overall, it's not really worth talking about. That's just it with New Mutants. It's not interesting. It just exists. It's not worth talking about. And that's it, everybody. That is the X-Men retrospective. It's good to be back for 2024, but because we ended on a bit of a downer with Dark Phoenix and New Mutants, let's talk about something a bit positive. Let's talk about Deadpool 3. The Deadpool 3 trailer. This movie looks really great. I'm really liking this movie so far. The R rating is going to add so much of a new perspective to the MCU. I think. I love how, from what I'm gathering from watching the trailer multiple times, it appears that the whole film is technically going to be about the Disney and Fox merger, but in more of a metaphor sense. So like how, the TVA is Disney, the Void is Fox, where maybe they're trying to get rid of the Fox timeline because there's too many continuity errors and doesn't make any sense. Seeing Pyro again is really shocking. I cannot wait to see what other characters come back from the old X-Men movies. That's going to be so good to see. Obviously there's a rumor going around because obviously there's actual Wolverine in the white suit where he's acting like his alter ego, which is Patch, which is an alter ego Wolverine does in the comic books from time to time as well. There's actually rumors running around that could be Daniel Radcliffe as like the new Wolverine for the MCU. That could be really cool. If that's the case, that could be a really cool way to reveal the new one, maybe, for the MCU. That could be interesting to do. Speaking of Wolverine, I love how they keep him hidden throughout the entire trailer as well. It does have a very 2000s feeling to it, and I am all here for it. Yeah, the new suit looks really cool. It's a much more brighter red. I wonder what happened to Wade and Vanessa though. I know in the second film they were gonna have a baby, so maybe she had a miscarriage or something like that. That's something that's been hinted at. I'm kind of mixed on Hugh Jackman coming back, to be honest, because while it was good, it's good to see him again. Logan was a great final performance for him, and I don't really understand why. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really understand why they have to bring it back, but I mean, they said they're not going to mess with that, so hopefully it's good. And yeah, overall, can't wait to see this movie. July cannot get here quicker enough because I need to see this movie like right fucking now, and hopefully this will save the MCU, but we'll see about that. Not that the MCU really needs that much saving, to be honest. And that's it. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll have a great 2024 for the rest of the year. Got plenty more episodes planned, got plenty more episodes lined up. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you whenever I see you next. Oh, and